virus ini, mungkin seperti virus-virus influenza yang lainnya. Jadi kalau kita lihat jelas dampak dari pandemi ini bukan hanya kepada kesehatan, lini berbagai sisi dampaknya seperti apa. Oleh karena itu di dalam pelaksanaan pembangunan ketahanan bencana ini mitigasi dan adaptasi harus juga dilihat secara keseluruhan. Dalam perencanaan pembangunan nasional seperti yang saya katakan di depan, yang berbasis penanggulangan risiko bencana harus menjadi perhatian dan kewajiban untuk dilaksanakan secara bersama penguatan sistem ketahanan bencana. Dan ini kita sebetulnya untuk penanggulangan bencana alam ini TRPB, alhamdulillah kita sudah keluar perpresnya nomor 87 di tahun 2020. Nah, tentunya ini juga harus betul-betul dipertajam dengan rencana-rencana aksi nanti ke depannya. Setiap tahun harus bagaimana, dan ini juga tentunya harus sejalan dengan yang saya hormati. Pemerintah Indonesia telah memperhatikan aspek lingkungan strategis sebagai pendukung menciptakan pelaksanaan kebijakan pembangunan yang baik. Penyusunan kebijakan saja, tapi juga pendekatan kewilayahan. Antar daerah, multidisiplin, multi pemangku kepentingan, posisi geografis Indonesia secara global, dan serta tantangan pembangunan saat ini yang akan datang. Jadi ini merupakan Pak Presiden secara spesifik meminta kepada Menteri PPN Bappenas untuk melakukan reformasi beberapa isu, antara lain mengenai kesehatan nasional, sistem kesehatan nasional, karena setelah kita lihat pandemi ini banyak hal yang kita harus perbaiki, kesiapan rumah sakit, tenaga kesehatan, infrastruktur yang memadai, itu ternyata banyak, kita menyadari banyak sekali yang perlu diperbaiki. Kemudian sistem perlindungan sosial, nah ini bagaimana dampaknya kepada masyarakat, bagaimana kita menyiapkan data secara keseluruhan untuk betul-betul membantu semua masyarakat yang terkena dampak langsung dari pandemi ini. Jadi kalau kita melihat bencana alam, tentunya kita bisa fokus ke satu wilayah tertentu. Nah ini secara nasional dampaknya sangat signifikan, dan juga dampak dari luar. Ini satu hal lagi yang tidak kalah penting adalah penguatan sistem ketahanan bencana. Nah ini kita selama ini sudah siap dengan mungkin kita salah satu negara juga yang relatif siap dengan ketahanan bencana ini. Ya karena memang kita sering kali mendapatkan bencana, terutama hidrometeorologi dan lain-lain, dan kita relatif menyadari hal ini dan sudah menyiapkan itu. Namun dari sisi, jadi secara khusus arahan untuk memperkuat sistem ketahanan bencana ini dimaksudkan untuk mendorong kapasitas kesiapsiagaan dan mitigasi risiko bencana di masyarakat. Jadi bukan hanya di pemerintah, tapi masyarakat juga yang kalau kita lihat sekarang pun masih banyak masyarakat yang sebenarnya tidak menyadari juga gitu, atau ya kurang memahami betul dampaknya yang pandemi yang juga cukup meningkat tinggi di akhir-akhir ini. Banyak rumah sakit yang sudah kewalahan. Jadi hal ini juga perlu disadari oleh masyarakat bahwa dampak ini bukan hanya ke diri sendiri, tapi juga ke masyarakat luas. Jadi oleh karena itu upaya pengurangan risiko bencana akan difokuskan melalui pengembangan pertama data kebencanaan yang terintegrasi. Seperti saya katakan, kalau kita bicara memerlukan bantuan ini dari yang terdampak secara langsung, baik secara fisik, sosial maupun ekonomi. Kemudian penguatan sistem peringatan dini. Ini juga menjadi krusial sekali supaya kita betul-betul bisa menyiapkan dengan sebaik-baiknya, seoptimal mungkin. Kemudian penguatan pemberdayaan masyarakat tadi seperti saya katakan di depan, ini menjadi kunci juga bagaimana mengurangi pandemi ini. Sebetulnya diperlukan juga kelembagaan yang kolaboratif. Jadi antara satu lembaga dengan lembaga lain bisa kerjasama dan tahu apa yang harus dikerjakan. Dan yang terakhir adalah sinergi pembiayaan untuk penanggulangan bencana. Nah ini tentunya dengan kondisi pandemi kemarin, sekarang ini kemarin pemerintah sudah menyiapkan juga Perpu, bagaimana kita menyiapkan pendanaan untuk menanggulangi bencana non alam ini, memiliki dana yang lebih besar, kemudian juga kita bisa menangani dan fokus kepada penanganan isu-isu ini. Dan tentu saja upaya-upaya tersebut akan memperkuat diperkuat dengan kerangka regulasi. Saya katakan tadi, pemerintah mengeluarkan Perpu, regulasi-regulasi yang terkait yang lainnya untuk memastikan ini bisa berjalan dengan baik dan sesuai dengan kerangka hukum yang berlaku dalam menangani kebencanaan ini. Jadi ini semua sebetulnya kita di dalam RKP 2021 kita sudah siapkan semua. Walaupun di dalam RPJMN kita belum merevisi target-target, RKP kita sudah sesuaikan dengan target-target baru serta fokus yang baru untuk memastikan recovery ekonomi nanti di 2021 seperti apa. Dan tentunya kalau kita bicara recovery ekonomi harus membuat kita harus melihat dari berbagai sisi. Lebih lanjut dapat saya sampaikan bahwa tujuan dari reformasi atau penguatan sistem ketangguhangan bencana ini adalah mengurangi jumlah kematian dan orang yang terdampak langsung dari bencana ini. Berkurangnya kerugian ekonomi tentunya yang relatif terhadap PDB dan diakibatkan oleh dampak bencana, serta bertambahnya jumlah kota dan permukiman yang mengimplementasikan kebijakan dan perencanaan terkait penanggulangan bencana ini. Jadi kita juga memastikan kota-kota, daerah-daerah betul-betul siap dengan kondisi ini. Ini merupakan salah satu target yang kita ingin canangkan, kita tuangkan di dalam rencana ke depan. Kita juga ingin memastikan juga jumlah kota permukiman yang mengimplementasikan penanganan holistik risiko bencana di semua lini ini. Jadi kita memastikan juga sampai ke akar ke masyarakatnya. Dan ini sudah disesuaikan juga dengan agenda global kebencanaan, yaitu dalam Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction atau SFDRR tahun 2015-2030, itu untuk mencapai Indonesia tangguh bencana di tahun 2020. Jadi kita betul-betul sesuaikan antara RPJMN, kemudian RIPB, serta tentunya aturan-aturan yang sudah disiapkan di dalam secara nasional, internasional, yaitu di SFDRR ini. Implementasi reformasi sistem ketangguhangan bencana akan dilakukan dengan beberapa tahapan di setiap tahunnya. Jadi kita sudah juga memuat tahapan-tahapan apa yang harus disiapkan di 2021, tentunya 2020 sudah lewat. Kemudian di 2022 kita akan melakukan apa? Antara lain misalnya di 2021 kita memperkuat sistem ketahanan bencana ini. Kemudian nanti juga pemantapannya, dan tentunya nanti di 2023 bagaimana memastikan sustainabilitas ini di dalam jangka panjang. Jangka waktu pelaksanaan reformasi sistem ketahanan bencana yang akan disusun ini disiapkan dalam 2 periode, yaitu periode penguatan di tahun 2020 sampai dengan 2022, jadi ada 2 tahapan. Kemudian yang berikutnya nanti di penguatan dan keberlanjutannya. Bapak Ibu, para pembicara dan hadirin yang saya banggakan, acara seminar ini tentunya dapat menjadi ajang diskusi yang relevan bagi pemerintah Indonesia dan mungkin bagi negara-negara sahabat lainnya sebagai masukan dalam memperkuat perencanaan dan pembangunan untuk kebentanan bencana. Ya, tentunya kita juga harapan masukan dari para ahli internasional yang mendalami isu-isu kebencanaan ini untuk memperkuat apa yang sedang kita siapkan. Dan tentunya kami mengundang juga lembaga perwakilan non-pemerintah, swadaya masyarakat, universitas, hadir di sini untuk memberikan masukan-masukan, kita diskusikan apa-apa yang perlu diperbaiki, apa yang perlu diperkuat, kemudian siapa yang harus terlibat. Ini saya pikir sangat penting sekali untuk mendapatkan masukan dari berbagai pihak. Sebelum mengakhiri sambutan ini, saya juga ingin menyampaikan bahwa ini merupakan satu kehormatan bagi saya berada di sini bersama para hadirin seluruhnya. Kami mengharapkan melalui seminar ini dapat mendapatkan masukan strategi untuk memperkuat sistem ketangguhangan bencana di Indonesia dalam menghadapi ancaman bencana baik alam maupun non-alam. Tentunya non-alam ini kita sudah rasakan begitu signifikan dan begitu masif, dan dampaknya bukan hanya di kita tapi seluruh dunia. Sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada para pembicara, moderator, saudara-saudara yang sudah hadir atas perhatiannya. Semoga kita bisa bekerja sama dengan baik, meningkatkan upaya bersama menjadikan negara kita dan tentunya semua pihak yang lebih baik. Semoga Bapak Ibu selalu sehat-sehat semuanya, mengikuti protokol kesehatan dengan disiplin yang tinggi. Ini penting sekali kalau bicara di tempat umum pakai masker selalu. Ini saya pikir basic yang sangat penting dan masih sering diabaikan oleh masyarakat luas. Jadi saya pikir ini menjadi sangat penting buat kita semua. Jaga jarak tentunya menjadi hal yang tidak kalah penting. Demikian Bapak Ibu, sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih. Mohon maaf apabila ada yang kurang berkenan. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Bapak Deputi Bidang Pengembangan Regional. Kami ucapkan terima kasih atas sambutan pembukanya. Kami mohon izin melanjutkan ke sesi berikutnya Bapak, dan sekali lagi terima kasih. Baik Bapak Ibu sekalian, kami lanjutkan ke sesi kedua untuk menyampaikan perspektif dari Indonesia, bagaimana Indonesia akan membangun ketahanan bencana dan implementasi maupun praktik baik yang sudah dilakukan selama ini. Pada sesi berikutnya, kesempatan bersama akan kami berikan kepada Bapak Direktur Tata Ruang dan Penanganan Bencana Bappenas untuk memberikan bahan-bahan terkait kebijakan dan strategi yang sudah dilakukan selama ini. Kami persilakan Bapak Sumedi Andono Mulyo.
Baik, Pak Linggo, terima kasih Pak Deputi, Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati. Selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Morning everybody. Bisa di-share Mbak Linggo atau dari saya?
Baik Pak. Mas Arka bisa dibantu?
Yang terakhir ya. Bapak Ibu, ini beberapa pemikiran dari kami di Bappenas dengan hasil diskusi. Nanti pasti akan membutuhkan masukan dari Bapak Ibu untuk bagaimana penguatan sistem ketahanan bencana, karena sistem itu menyangkut beberapa subsistem, baik menyangkut masyarakatnya sendiri, kemudian pemerintah daerah, kementerian lembaga, dan juga menyangkut peralatan, teknologi, manajemen kebencanaan, dan sebagainya. Nah, hal-hal itulah yang kami coba perdalam, dan kita juga memahami kondisi kebencanaan di setiap wilayah itu berbeda. Kebencanaan di Papua dengan di Sulawesi, dengan di Kalimantan, dengan di Jawa itu berbeda. Karakteristik masyarakat juga berbeda, dan juga bagaimana perilaku atau behavior dari masyarakat dan juga dari pemerintah daerah itu juga berbeda. Mohon di-share atau dari saya, Mbak Linggo? Hostnya dibuka dulu.
Ya, berkenan. Sudah, Pak? Sebentar. Belum bisa ya Pak, ya mohon maaf. Untuk host bisa bantu share screen? Ya baik.
Bisa dibantu? Sudah ya?
Sudah Pak.
Baik, baik Bapak Ibu, berikutnya. Ada 4 hal yang kami sampaikan, terus berikutnya, ini cepat saja. Ada 2 tantangan yang kita hadapi. Yang pertama, bagaimana menjaga keseimbangan antara membangun ekonomi, membangun daerah, dengan mitigasi bencana. Dua-duanya sama pentingnya, sehingga nanti bagaimana mitigasi risiko bencana itu akan menjadi mainstreaming di dalam keseluruhan kebijakan pembangunan. Kita memahami kondisi di setiap daerah berbeda. Berikutnya. Ini lesson learn yang kita pelajari, dan peran perempuan dan pasar itu menjadi sangat penting di dalam membangun ketahanan bencana. Terutama ketika terjadi bencana, Itu ketiga hal tadi menjadi sangat penting. Dan di sini modal sosial, ini contoh di Jepang, bagaimana masyarakat Jepang rela antri berjam-jam untuk bagaimana mendapatkan itu, dan juga membangun semangat di dalam menghadapi pemulihan pasca bencana. Demikian pula kejadian di Jogja, bagaimana modal sosial masyarakat untuk membangun kembali, dan juga peran perempuan, dan tidak kalah pentingnya adalah pasar. Ini adalah semua satu kombinasi yang memperkuat ketahanan bencana di tingkat masyarakat. Karena bagaimanapun sistem ketahanan bencana bertumpu kepada masyarakat. Jadi prinsip self-help, kemudian barulah nanti peran pemerintah untuk memfasilitasi bagaimana peringatan dini, infrastruktur, dan juga dari segi fasilitasi. Berikutnya. Ini pembelajaran di Lombok dan juga di Palu, bahwa peran pemerintah dan pemerintah daerah selain mainstreaming di dalam penanggulangan bencana, pengurangan risiko bencana, kemudian juga memperkuat manajemen kebencanaan, kemudian memprioritaskan investasi untuk pencegahan bencana dan juga untuk post disaster perbaikan. Selain itu juga bagaimana prinsip build back better, more safer and sustainable. Ini adalah semua bagaimana peran masyarakat, pemerintah daerah dan pemerintah akan menjadi sangat penting. Berikutnya. Ini contoh bagaimana kolaborasi dan partnership di dalam penanganan COVID, inovasi yang dilakukan oleh masyarakat seperti cantelan, kemudian juga bagaimana kebersamaan di dalam menjaga gotong royong, semangat partnership di tingkat masyarakat, itu akan memberikan kesempatan berbagi beban dan juga saling pendekatan manajemen kebencanaan itu harus dikelola dengan pendekatan kolaborasi yang menyangkut kerjasama antara pemerintah, perguruan tinggi, peneliti, pelaku usaha, kemudian juga masyarakat, dan tidak kalah pentingnya adalah media. Karena media memberikan informasi. Dengan demikian, sistem ketahanan bencana itu bertumpu kepada kolaborasi dan partnership. Ini akan menjadi suatu sistem yang berkelanjutan dan juga sistem yang solid. Berikutnya. Berikutnya, dengan memperhatikan semua itu, manajemen kebencanaan dalam kerangka agenda pembangunan. Sehingga pendekatan penguatan sumber daya manusia, pembangunan infrastruktur, penyederhanaan birokrasi, itu adalah sejalan dengan apa yang dilakukan di dalam manajemen kebencanaan. Berikutnya. Nah, di sini dan preparedness atau kesiapan masyarakat itu menjadi bagian di dalam penyusunan kebijakan baik di tingkat sehingga nanti pemerintah daerah itu mesti harus menyiapkan bagaimana contingency plan, rencana kedaruratan, ya, dan juga bagaimana kerjasama di dalam memperkuat koordinasi penanganan bencana. Berikutnya. Ini sesuai dengan rencana induk penanggulangan bencana, itu ada 6 aspek yang menjadi sangat penting. Yang pertama menyangkut regulasi, jadi bagaimana kita memperkuat regulasi. Yang kedua menyangkut kerjasama, kemudian juga dari segi tata kelolanya. Yang kelima itu menyangkut kapasitas dan kapabilitas dari sumber daya manusia dan masyarakat. dan juga dari segi bagaimana kita mengelola kedaruratan dan penanganan bencana. Berikutnya. Ini ada 5 misi yang terkait dengan situ, bagaimana memperkuat manajemen kebencanaan dan juga dari sisi tata kelola pemerintahan daerah di dalam manajemen dan juga dalam menyangkut penanganan darurat bencana. Berikutnya. Nah, di sini dengan agenda pembangunan ada 7 agenda, ada 4 agenda pembangunan yang relevan dengan pengurangan risiko bencana. Yang pertama untuk pembangunan bagaimana karakteristik daerah di dalam penanganan bencana, kemudian juga dari segi sumber daya manusia, ini menyangkut social protection, dan juga dari segi pemahaman teranaan dan juga adaptasi terhadap perubahan iklim. Kemudian juga menyangkut infrastruktur kebencanaan, dan yang keempat itu dari segi investment yang menyangkut baik adaptasi terhadap perubahan iklim maupun mitigasi terhadap risiko bencana. Berikutnya. Nah, ini kaitan antara rencana induk penanggulangan bencana dengan rencana pembangunan jangka menengah nasional itu saling terkait dan saling memperkuat, sehingga nanti pelaksanaan RPJMN pada dasarnya sejalan dengan rencana induk penanggulangan bencana. Berikutnya. Berikutnya dari sisi reformasi atau penguatan sistem kebencanaan, ada beberapa prinsip yang kita perkuat. Yang pertama soal kerangka pemikiran, bagaimana pemahaman terhadap kebencanaan. Kemudian ini menyangkut yang kedua adalah kerangka kerjasama secara global. Yang ketiga menyangkut partisipasi masyarakat, kemudian juga governance, dan juga dari sisi modal sosial di dalam kebencanaan ini. Yang kelima dari segi bagaimana bagaimana pemahaman terhadap berbagai kebencanaan. Yang kelima itu menyangkut pemilihan prioritas di dalam siklus kebencanaan. Dan yang keenam itu menyangkut keterkaitan antara sistem reformasi kebencanaan dengan berbagai kebijakan yang ada di dalam perencanaan pembangunan. Berikutnya. Nah, di sini penguatan sistem kebencanaan itu menyangkut 3 hal persyaratan dasar. Yang pertama adalah data kebencanaan yang terintegrasi, dan juga menyangkut knowledge management atau manajemen pengetahuan didukung oleh sistem informasi yang baik. Yang persyaratan kedua adalah kolaborasi antara berbagai pihak atau pentahelix. Ini menyangkut perguruan tinggi, pemerintah daerah, pelaku usaha, masyarakat, lembaga penelitian dan kajian, dan juga dari sisi media. Yang ketiga, persyaratan yang harus dipenuhi itu menyangkut bagaimana konektivitas sistem di dalam kebencanaan ini. Kemudian ada 3 aspek yang menjadi fokus reformasi sistem kebencanaan, itu menyangkut dukungan strategis, kemudian kesiapan masyarakat, dan juga dari segi manajemen kebencanaan, termasuk peraturan perundangan, koordinasi pusat dan daerah, manajemen logistik, kemudian juga bagaimana memperkuat peran Pemda dan masyarakat, dan juga dari segi pembiayaan kebencanaan, termasuk inovasi pembiayaan dan juga asuransi kebencanaan. Berikutnya. Nah, ini ada beberapa langkah yang tadi sudah disampaikan Pak Deputi, Pak Rudi, mulai dari tahun 2020 sampai 2024, itu kita mencoba untuk konsolidasi terhadap sistem kebencanaan sehingga nanti betul-betul bisa dikelola dengan baik. Pada tahun 2022 kita fokus kepada pemberdayaan masyarakat dan pemerintah daerah dan juga literasi kebencanaan. Karena semua sistem yang berujung kepada sistem kebencanaan pasti akan sangat tergantung kepada kekuatan atau partisipasi masyarakat. Nah, di sini kembali kita perlu perkuat pemahaman, pengetahuan, dan juga kesiapsiagaan masyarakat. Yang kedua adalah early warning system, ini menjadi sangat penting. Supaya masyarakat bisa siap, maka perlu ada satu sistem informasi dini yang nanti akan menjadi bagian di dalam informasi yang disiapkan untuk supaya masyarakat bisa memahami dan merespon dengan cepat. Yang ketiga adalah dari segi pembiayaan. Nah, ini tahun 2022 kita mencoba untuk fokus kepada tiga ini. Ini sejalan dengan apa yang sudah disiapkan di dalam SFDRR dan juga SDGs dan juga RPJMN. Berikutnya. Ini strategi yang kita tempuh. Yang pertama, integrasi satu data kebencanaan, sehingga nanti kami berharap ada kerjasama, dukungan, dan juga menyangkut kolaborasi antara BNPB, kemudian dengan BPS, kemudian juga dengan Kementerian Lembaga, BMKG, kemudian LIPI, LAPAN, dan sebagainya, sebagai satu kesatuan sehingga nanti data bisa dikelola dengan baik. Berikutnya, itu menyangkut early warning system, multi hazard early warning system. Ini kita buat supaya terpadu, sehingga nanti dari hulu sampai hilir bisa terkelola dengan baik, sehingga informasi yang diperoleh dari BMKG dapat terdelivery atau disampaikan kepada masyarakat secara cepat melalui berbagai media. Berikutnya. Agenda yang ketiga itu memperkuat ketangguhan atau kesiapan masyarakat dengan pemberdayaan dan juga pendampingan secara terintegrasi. Dari sini menyangkut berbagai pola komunikasi dan juga pola pendampingan dan juga pola pelatihan kepada masyarakat supaya pemahaman, kemudian juga kapasitas dan kesiapan menjadi meningkat. Berikutnya. Nah, agenda keempat ini memperkuat kolaborasi antara pemerintah, pemerintah daerah, pelaku usaha, masyarakat, media, dan perguruan tinggi. Berikutnya. Yang terakhir, inovatif investment and financing. Ini bagaimana menyangkut pembiayaan, inovasi di dalam pembiayaan dan investasi, sehingga kita tidak lagi memperhitungkan suatu bencana sebagai kerugian, tapi sebagai investasi. Jadi investasi kebencanaan itu untuk mengurangi kerugian. Jadi kita harus siapkan dengan baik, termasuk juga nanti pola-pola pembiayaan supaya beban APBN itu tidak terlalu berat, tapi kita membuat suatu kerangka investasi di masa depan untuk kebencanaan ini. Terus demikian. Selanjutnya. Berikutnya. Demikian Bapak Ibu sebagai penutup, pembelajaran yang kita peroleh dari berbagai kasus bencana, baik di Jepang, di Indonesia. Yang pertama adalah ketangguhan atau kesiapan masyarakat, kemudian juga respon pemerintah yang cepat, dan juga kolaborasi yang baik, itu akan menjadi bagian penting di dalam manajemen kebencanaan. Jadi tiga pelaku ini akan menjadi sangat penting. Kemudian pemerintah Indonesia telah mengadopsi kebijakan kebencanaan dalam RPJMN dan juga berbagai dalam dokumen perencanaan. Sehingga ini perlu dukungan dari lintas kementerian lembaga, bagaimana pelaksanaan manajemen kebencanaan bisa dilakukan dengan sebaik-baiknya. Dan terakhir, sekali lagi, kolaborasi, kerjasama, kemitraan, berbagai pihak, itu menjadi sangat penting, terutama di dalam pengelolaan data, informasi dan pengetahuan atau knowledge management, kemudian penguatan early warning system, pemberdayaan masyarakat, kemudian juga kolaborasi, dan yang terakhir adalah inovasi pembiayaan dan investasi. Demikian Bapak Ibu sebagai pengantar, terima kasih atas perhatiannya. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Medi, Bapak Direktur Tata dan Penanganan Bencana. Saya sedikit menyimpulkan dari beberapa hal yang telah disampaikan oleh Bapak, di mana aksi pengurangan risiko bencana itu akan menjadi prioritas dan kita harus mengutamakan kesiapsiagaan dan mitigasi bencana, termasuk menyiapkan rencana kontingensi di tingkat pusat dan daerah sehingga kita lebih siap dalam menghadapi berbagai skenario pada saat ancaman dan potensi itu terjadi. Kemudian yang kedua, pentingnya membangun kapasitas kesiapsiagaan dan mitigasi serta kolaborasi di setiap lini pembangunan yang melibatkan stakeholders pentahelix yang terdiri dari akademisi, pemerintah, media massa, kemudian dunia usaha dan juga masyarakat secara bersama-sama. Yang ketiga, kita perlu memperkuat dan mengembangkan satu data kebencanaan, membangun sistem peringatan dini terpadu, melakukan pemberdayaan masyarakat secara bersama-sama di semua sektor yang memang saat ini di Indonesia sudah banyak kementerian lembaga, pemerintah daerah dan juga komponen dunia usaha dan lembaga non pemerintah yang melakukan aksi-aksi pemberdayaan masyarakat mendukung upaya penanggulangan bencana, serta bagaimana kita mengoptimalkan sinergi pembiayaan untuk penanggulangan bencana. Bapak Ibu, pada kesempatan ini berikutnya kami akan memberi kesempatan untuk Pak Afrial Rosya, Bapak Direktur Peringatan Dini, sedikit mungkin tadi sudah ditampilkan juga oleh teman-teman bahwa Bapak akan menyampaikan praktik baik apa yang sudah dilakukan Badan Nasional Penanggulangan Bencana bersama dengan seluruh stakeholder pentahelix untuk membangun Indonesia yang lebih tangguh di tahun 2045, sebagaimana juga tujuan besar Rencana Induk Penanggulangan Bencana 2020-2044. Kepada Pak Ari, kami persilakan waktunya, Bapak.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Leto. Selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Salam Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang saya hormati Deputi Bidang Pengembangan Regional Bappenas, Bapak Rudi S. Prawira Dinata, PhD. Kemudian para narasumber, moderator, hadirin peserta pertemuan yang berbahagia. Pertama-tama saya menyampaikan apresiasi dan terima kasih nih kepada Bappenas yang sudah melakukan rangkaian acara. Saya dengar ini sudah merupakan rangkaian yang keberapa dari kegiatan webinar terkait upaya-upaya penyusunan strategi ketahanan bencana. Hari ini mungkin juga sudah menyampaikan permohonan maaf dari Pak Deputi, Pak Lili. Kebetulan ada kegiatan lain sehingga hari ini saya akan mewakili beliau. Mudah-mudahan apa yang saya sampaikan bisa juga memberikan masukan dalam kegiatan hari ini. Slide. Ya, terima kasih. Ya, kita memahami bahwasanya bencana adalah merupakan kejadian yang berulang. Nah, periode berulangnya satu bencana juga akan seperti disampaikan tadi tidak akan sama satu dengan yang lainnya. Kita bisa melihat kalau periode perulangan banjir misalnya itu ada merupakan periode ulang kegiatan bencana yang cepat. Sementara tsunami mungkin barangkali sebagai contoh adalah memiliki periode perulangan yang cukup panjang. Nah, berulangnya kejadian bencana ini perlunya memerlukan adanya ketahanan baik pemerintah maupun masyarakat dalam menghadapi bencana. Hal ini dimaksudkan untuk mengurangi risiko bencana. Nah, untuk itu kita mengetahui juga pengenalan bencana sangat spesifik, walaupun jenis ancaman bencana itu sama. Untuk itu ketahanan bencana memerlukan pengelolaan pengetahuan yang bisa dijadikan pembelajaran dan edukasi bagi masyarakat. Slide. Nah, pemerintah sebenarnya berkomitmen untuk memasukkan penanggulangan bencana sebagai suatu tantangan pembangunan yang harus dijawab dalam melalui kebijakan penanggulangan bencana yang komprehensif. Nah, kebijakan penanggulangan tersebut sudah dilaksanakan dalam sebuah kerangka sistem penanggulangan bencana yang dibangun dalam dua kerangka dasar, yaitu meliputi kerangka tata kelola. Di sini ada beberapa 5 bagian yang terdiri dari pengaturan, perencanaan, kemudian funding, institusional, dan juga kapasitas, pengembangan kapasitas. Kemudian kerangka dasar kedua adalah performance atau implementasi yang terdiri dari upaya-upaya pencegahan dan kesiapsiagaan, tanggap darurat, kemudian juga recovery. Semuanya akan berujung kepada upaya-upaya pengurangan risiko bencana jiwa, kemudian juga kerusakan dan juga kerugian. Ujung dari semua kebijakan kebencanaan ini. Slide. Nah, ini mungkin kami hanya memperkenalkan, mungkin teman-teman sudah juga banyak mendengar bahwasanya kita Pak Kepala selalu menyampaikan beberapa moto, terutama untuk aspek pengurangan risiko bencana. Pak Kepala sudah menyampaikan kita jaga alam, maka alam jaga kita. Itu adalah moto yang digadang oleh Bapak Kepala Badan Nasional Penanggulangan Bencana untuk bisa membangkitkan upaya-upaya preventif dalam penanggulangan bencana. Sementara di sisi emergency response, di sana disampaikan bahwasanya adalah keselamatan rakyat adalah hukum tertinggi. Salus populi suprema lex esto, artinya pemerintah benar-benar bertanggung jawab atas keselamatan rakyat dalam terjadinya bencana. Slide. Nah, tadi disampaikan bahwasanya regulasi atau pengaturan adalah salah satu hal dalam tata kelola yang perlu diperhatikan. Undang-Undang 24 2007 tentang penanggulangan bencana lahir dengan membawa perubahan mendasar dalam pelaksanaan penanggulangan bencana yang awalnya hanya lebih fokus kepada responsif, sekarang lebih pada menjadi preventif aktif. Nah, ini tingginya dinamika, kemudian banyaknya eskalasi kejadian bencana menuntut beberapa undang-undang atau beberapa peraturan melalui harus melakukan revisi. Sebagai contoh, kami sudah sedang melakukan revisi tentang peraturan pemerintah nomor 21 tahun 2008 tentang penyelenggaraan bencana, kemudian peraturan pemerintah nomor 22 tahun 2008 tentang pendanaan penanggulangan bencana. Nah, tadi disampaikan oleh Pak Direktur bahwasanya dalam PP 21, revisi PP 21 kami mencoba memasukkan bagaimana mekanisme multi hazard early warning system bisa dilaksanakan dan penguatan emergency operation center di daerah. Kemudian juga berusaha memasukkan contingency fund di dalam penanggulangan bencana serta upaya-upaya untuk menyediakan on-call budget di dalam anggaran APBD. Kemudian juga kita tadi disampaikan sudah ada regulasi presiden nomor 87 tahun 2020 tentang RIPB, dan juga kita mengetahui bahwasanya sudah ada standar pelayanan minimum yang harus dilakukan oleh kabupaten kota dalam penanggulangan bencana. Artinya bahwasanya regulasi untuk pelaksanaan atau penguatan ketaatan bencana serta sudah cukup banyak sehingga perlu ditataran implementasi yang harus kita kuatkan. Slide. Nah, selanjutnya dalam perencanaan, bahwasanya perencanaan penanggulangan bencana menjadi yang penting yang tidak terpisahkan dari perencanaan pembangunan nasional. Nah, dalam perencanaan pembangunan jangka menengah 2024 telah ditetapkan bahwasanya ketahanan bencana menjadi agenda pembangunan prioritas yang ke-6. Di sisi lain, BNPB sudah bersama dengan Bappenas juga telah menghasilkan rencana induk penanggulangan bencana 2020-2044 yang diharapkan menjadi rencana umum untuk pedoman perencanaan penanggulangan bencana nasional yang dapat mendukung pencapaian visi Indonesia tahun 2045. Nah, ini adalah rangkaian beberapa perencanaan yang sudah dilakukan atau dilaksanakan oleh BNPB. Lanjut. Untuk pendanaan, ada beberapa skema kerjasama yang sudah dilakukan pemerintah untuk mendukung pembiayaan dalam penanggulangan bencana. Hal baru yang kami ketahui adalah bahwasanya saat ini sedang ada inisiasi dari pemerintah melalui Kementerian Keuangan untuk pembiayaan transfer risiko bencana melalui dana bersama Pooling Fund penanggulangan bencana. Kemudian tahun depan kita akan mendapatkan bantuan dari World Bank, yaitu dalam rangka peningkatan kapasitas masyarakat dan juga meningkatkan atau pengembangan multi hazard early warning system yang sudah disampaikan tadi oleh Pak Direktur, bahwasanya peringatan dini bencana terpadu adalah menjadi suatu keharusan yang harus kita wujudkan di tahun 2000 setidaknya sampai 2024 sehingga upaya-upaya penyelamatan masyarakat akan menjadi lebih optimal. Kemudian juga kita mengetahui bahwasanya dalam Permendagri 20 tahun 2018 tentang pengelolaan keuangan desa, dana desa sudah dapat digunakan sebagai bagian dalam penanggulangan bencana. Itu beberapa sumber pendanaan baru barangkali kita harapkan bisa dimanfaatkan seoptimal mungkin. Di samping upaya-upaya proposal perubahan revisi dari PP terkait adanya contingency fund dan juga mungkin pendanaan dari asuransi, barangkali mungkin bisa dicoba dilaksanakan. Lanjut. Slide. Kemudian di peningkatan sinergi kelembagaan juga perlu dilakukan bahwasanya rencana induk penanggulangan bencana sudah diharapkan mampu meningkatkan kerjasama antar pemangku kepentingan yang semakin efektif. Sejatinya kita mengetahui bahwasanya penanggulangan bencana bukan saja merupakan tanggung jawab pemerintah semata, tapi juga menjadi tanggung jawab masyarakat, dunia usaha, media, perguruan tinggi, sesuai dengan kewenangan dan kapasitasnya. Untuk itulah konsep kolaborasi pentahelix ini yang digadang-gadang oleh Pak Kepala BNPB dalam upaya meningkatkan atau menjalin partisipasi stakeholder yang lebih baik terkait dalam penanggulangan bencana. Slide. Terakhir ada terkait dengan peningkatan kapasitas. Nah, kita mengetahui semakin tinggi kapasitas, maka akan semakin mengurangi dampak risiko dari satu bencana. Saya meyakini bahwa pengembangan sumber daya manusia adalah bagian penting dalam pengembangan kapasitas. BNPB melalui Pusat Pendidikan dan Pelatihan Penanggulangan Bencana sudah menjalin kerjasama sejak 2 tahun lalu, kalau tidak salah, dengan Badan Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia di setiap provinsi dalam upaya melakukan pemenuhan kebutuhan sumber daya manusia di bidang penanggulangan bencana yang profesional dan berdaya saing. Jadi kita melakukan kerjasama pendidikan dan pelatihan di bidang penanggulangan bencana. Kami memberikan pelatihan kepada widya isra dari BPSDM yang ada di provinsi, sehingga teman-teman di BPSDM bisa melaksanakan pelatihan penanggulangan bencana. Kemudian juga untuk seperti disampaikan tadi, kita di 2021 sampai 2024 dengan pendanaan dari World Bank akan melakukan pengembangan 5.744 desa tangguh bencana. Ini adalah kegiatan besar yang akan dilaksanakan dalam rangka meningkatkan pemberdayaan dan kapasitas di level masyarakat, termasuk di dalamnya adalah peningkatan kapasitas relawan dan forum pengurangan risiko bencana yang ada di daerah. Slide. Nah, bagaimana meningkatkan ketahanan bencana? Nah, ini mungkin barangkali kita tetap akan memperhatikan 3 aspek utama bagaimana risiko harus dikurangi. Yang pertama adalah bagaimana mengurangi hazard melalui pencegahan, kemudian bagaimana mengurangi kerentanan melalui mitigasi dan risk transfer, kemudian bagaimana meningkatkan kapasitas melalui kesiapsiagaan yang optimal. Sehingga ini juga biasa dilakukan istilahnya di BNPB identifikasi, kenali ancamannya, kemudian kenali masalahnya, kemudian siapkan strategi dan cari solusinya. Nah, itu mungkin barangkali yang biasa kami lakukan di BNPB terhadap hal-hal dalam upaya-upaya peningkatan ketahanan bencana. Lanjut. Nah, tapi disampaikan bahwasanya meningkatkan tata kelola adalah upaya yang paling optimal untuk melakukan atau mencapai ketahanan bencana. Ada beberapa hal yang perlu mendapatkan perhatian dalam upaya meningkatkan ketahanan bencana. Pertama adalah harmonisasi peraturan perundangan pusat daerah sebagai landasan penyelenggaraan penanggulangan bencana. Kemudian meningkatkan kualitas perencanaan dan pendanaan berbasis kebutuhan yang terukur. Kemudian melembagakan kolaborasi pentahelix sebagai sebuah kerangka koordinasi dalam seluruh tata kelola penanggulangan bencana. Lanjut. Kemudian juga membangun sistem pengetahuan berbasis data dan informasi untuk perencanaan, pengambilan keputusan, peningkatan sumber daya manusia sekaligus juga adaptasi terhadap kemajuan teknologi. Kemudian meningkatkan aksesibilitas masyarakat dalam membangun kemandirian, kesadaran kolektif dan sadar bencana, serta memperkuat sistem peringatan dini sebagai salah satu upaya meningkatkan kesiapsiagaan dan kecepatan respon dalam menghadapi bencana. Di beberapa hal barangkali yang perlu dikuatkan dalam tata kelola sehingga bisa mencapai upaya-upaya ketahanan bencana. Lanjut. Nah, ini aja beberapa gambaran mitigasi yang kita lakukan, baik struktural maupun non struktural, dalam upaya meningkatkan kesiapsiagaan menghadapi bencana. Di sini ada mitigasi vegetasi, kemudian juga edukasi, kemudian arsitektur rumah bencana ini. Lanjut. Ini salah satu program yang akan kita laksanakan, yang program cukup besar nanti Destana dan Keluarga Tangguh Bencana yang menjadi bagian penting dalam pelaksanaan IDRIP yang bantuan dari World Bank. Lanjut. Nah, dalam slide terakhir ini mungkin kita saya menyampaikan bahwasanya ada beberapa hal yang perlu menjadi perhatian kita bersama. Bahwasanya pertama, penanggulangan bencana dibangun melalui sistem penanggulangan bencana dalam kerangka tata kelola dan kerangka penyelenggaraan penanggulangan bencana. Kemudian reformasi ketahanan bencana dilakukan dengan memperkuat tata kelola untuk meningkatkan kinerja penyelenggaraan yang meliputi pengaturan, kelembagaan dan kapasitas. Kemudian adalah tata kelola yang kuat menjadi fondasi bagi peningkatan kinerja penyelenggaraan penanggulangan bencana yang terukur, fokus kepada peningkatan aksesibilitas, penguatan sistem peringatan dini, penguatan jangkauan sumber daya, peningkatan kolaborasi pentahelix. Barangkali itu yang dapat kami sampaikan, Bapak Ibu sekalian. Mudah-mudahan apa yang kami sampaikan bisa memberikan input, masukan pada penguatan strategi ketahanan bencana. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Pak Ari. Ada beberapa hal yang ingin kami highlight dan ini yang menarik sekali ketika Bapak sampaikan aspek utama mengurangi resiko bencana, bahwa kita perlu meningkatkan kesiapsiagaan yang optimal, mengenali ancaman, mengenali masalah, siapkan strategi dan siapkan solusi penanganannya. Itu yang nanti akan menjadi tugas kita bersama-sama tentunya ya Pak, yang didukung dengan harmonisasi regulasi lintas institusi maupun kita membutuhkan satu panduan bersama lintas helix, pentahelix yang disampaikan oleh Bapak untuk penanggulangan bencana di Indonesia. Selain itu satu hal bahwa kita perlu membangun knowledge management juga ya Pak bersama yang nanti melibatkan semua pihak sehingga literasi penanggulangan bencana itu bisa kita bangun di setiap lini pembangunan. Terima kasih sekali lagi Pak Ari, Bapak Sumedi Andono Mulyo atas presentasi dan ilmu yang telah kami terima pada sesi kedua ini. Kami mohon maaf sekali lagi pada para hadirin, untuk sesi ini tidak ada tanya jawab karena sesi tanya jawab akan disampaikan di akhir sesi ketiga setelah para pemapar dari negara sahabat menyampaikan beberapa lesson learned atau pengalaman baik yang sudah dilakukan selama ini. Sekali lagi mungkin sebelum kami hantarkan kepada Bapak Dr. Suprayoga Hadi, kami sampaikan bahwa saat ini sudah ada 8 penanya, Bapak Medi, Pak Ari, apabila berkenan bisa dilihat di https bit.ly/Q&A_learning resilience, sehingga nanti kami mohon perkenan Pak Medi dan Pak Ari masih bisa mengikuti pembahasan dan nanti apabila ada pertanyaan untuk Bapak sekalian bisa menjawab juga pada kesempatan berikutnya. Kami lanjutkan ke sesi berikutnya, sedikit pengantar mungkin sebelum masuk ke Bapak Suprayoga Hadi, bahwa sekali lagi kami ada fitur interpretasi yang Bapak Ibu bisa klik untuk memilih pilihan dalam English version maupun untuk Indonesian version yang di situ memang tertulis Japanese. Bapak Ibu perlu memilih link tersebut untuk memudahkan agar tidak terganggu dari diskusi yang sedang berjalan. Kami sampaikan pengantar untuk Bapak Moderator kali ini, bisa disampaikan Mbak Riza. Ya, Bapak Suprayoga Hadi merupakan perencana utama di Bappenas. Saat ini beliau menjadi Wakil Ketua Ikatan Ahli Bencana Indonesia. dan juga pernah memimpin salah satu Direktorat Jenderal di Kementerian Desa, PDT dan Trans, dan juga memiliki pengalaman untuk penanggulangan bencana sejak 2004. Salah satu prestasi yang juga dihasilkan bagaimana kemudian penanganan bencana Aceh bersama juga Bapak Deputi kami melalui BRR, kita bisa kemudian menginisiasi Undang-Undang 24 2007 dengan semua pentahelix dan terbangunnya Badan Nasional Penanggulangan Bencana. Kepada Bapak Suprayoga Hadi, kami persilahkan untuk memoderatori sesi kali ini, Pak. Mungkin dalam kalau untuk lebih nyamannya Bapak bisa menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Sekali lagi kami persilahkan. Terima kasih, Pak Yoga.
Terima kasih Mbak Lego, Bapak Ibu sekalian, peserta webinar pada pagi hari ini. Izinkan saya untuk memimpin acara paparan maupun nanti diskusi yang akan dilakukan mungkin sampai dengan jam 12:30 nanti siang. Dan izinkan saya mungkin karena ini ada interpreter, supaya interpreternya bisa kerja sekaligus menerjemahkan dalam hal ini, dan sekaligus juga memperhatikan bahwa 3 dari 6 pembicara ini dari luar kebetulan, dari global partners. Jadi saya izin untuk menggunakan mungkin bahasa Inggris untuk memandu paparan maupun diskusi nantinya. Mungkin ditayangkan dulu ininya apa namanya, saya perkenalkan dulu 6 pembicara yang nanti akan memaparkan materinya secara langsung. Jadi 6 pembicara dulu, nanti mungkin masing-masing sekitar 10 menit menyampaikan paparannya. Kemudian nanti kita punya waktu sekitar 1 jam 15 menit mungkin nanti untuk diskusi dalam hal ini. So I would like to start this session by introducing actually all the distinguished speakers, and I start with Ibu Dr. Wiwandari Handayani. Ibu Wiwi, she's a lecturer from the University of Diponegoro from Semarang, and she will be speaking in the context of enabling environment for resilience building, which is very important, I think, on the basis of how the Indonesian disaster resilience reform will be shaped and also will be developed in the near future. And I believe that the University of Diponegoro already been in collaboration with Bappenas in preparing actually the first draft of the Indonesian disaster resilience system reform, and I believe that Ibu Wiwi will do dissenting actually some draft of the reform itself, and as a continuation actually from the previous presentation of Pak Sumedi and also Pak Ari from the BNPB in much more detailed context of the reform itself. And then the second speakers will be Pak Amit Proti. Is coming from the Global Resilience Cities Network, GRCN, which is very quite distinguished institution related with the resilience cities. And I believe Pak Amit will share actually some experience and also lesson learned from previous projects taken in not only in Asia but also in the global context. And I believe that Indonesia would like to be in close contact with the GRCN in terms of how the Indonesian disaster resilience reform will do reform in terms of the Indonesian context, as well as learning from a global context. And then the second theme, actually, we would like to learn from about the data, the integration of the data and information, which is very important. That's already been presented by Pak Deputy, Pak Rudi, Pak Sumedi, Pak Director, and also Pak Ari from the BNPB. Data is a must, actually. And I believe the two distinguished speakers, Pak Petra and Pak Puji, which is actually Indonesian, but their experience is in a global context actually. Pak Petra used to be also the officers at the FAID at the Australian 8th, and Pak Puji is a very well-known worldwide experience working with the UN as well as the SCAP previously at the UNDP as well. And I believe their global experience will do a lot of contribution from the perspective of global experience in Indonesian context. And then finally, the same three will talk about the community centered along with what we call the multi-hazard early warning system. And two distinguished speakers, I believe everybody quite know Professor Carl Kim from the University of Hawaii, Department of Urban and Regional Planning, as well as Mr. Lalit Kumar Dasyora. He's from ADPC, very well-known actually institution, along with the ASEAN Disaster Preparedness Center in Bangkok. I used to work quite closely with the ADPC since 15 years ago actually. And this is quite honor actually for Indonesian, for Bappenas, having Lalit and of course Pak Kim, Professor Kim, to be in panel with other panelists in this webinar. So that's my introduction to all the panelists, distinguished panelists. And for the next 60 minutes actually, each of the speaker will have 10 minutes actually to present the presentation or the intervention. And later on, after all the presentations, finished and delivered, we will try to open the floor for the bit.ly question that already been compiled by the Secretariat, as well as maybe if there's a time, we need to also to invite from the direct intervention or direct question from the raise hand, as well as from the chat room, if there's a time available. So I will start with the same one, and I will invite Dr. Wiwi to start the presentation for the next 10 minutes. The time and the floor is yours, Dr. Wiwi, please.
Ya, thank you Pak Yoga. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, selamat pagi menjelang siang, Bapak Ibu semua. Mohon izin saya memberikan paparan mengenai multi-level and multi-stakeholders work on enabling environment. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just suddenly realized if I speak in Bahasa, then there will be the interpreter will come up. So it's quite disturbing me. I'm so sorry for that. So should I then change it into English? Yeah. If I speak into English, okay. I'm sorry. Then I will try to speak into English. I'm sorry for the disturbance because when I speak in Bahasa, I initially start to thinking to speak in Bahasa because then the interpreter will help me to speak in English. But suddenly I realize there will be like double word. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Yeah. Again, the Excellency Pak Deputi, Pak Direktur. From Bappenas, Pak Medi and Pak Ari from BNPB, moderator and all ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to briefly start my presentation, the speaker series today. At this great opportunity, I would like to talk about the enabling environment, focusing on multi-level and multi-stakeholder work. As you know, like my brief idea saying that when we want to reform the disaster resilience, it means we need to focusing on some important aspects on enabling environment. And as already several times mentioned by Pak Deputy and also Pak Direktur, there are some concern about the importance of collaborative actions, and with that direction, it is expected that we can create the enabling environment to enhance resilience in Indonesia. But before I start with that part, please allow me to start a little bit with some introduction on definition and concept about resilience itself, because in Indonesia, resilient words are sometimes confusing in terms that we can use the word for many sectors or with many different but interrelated meaning. In Bahasa, we call it as ketahanan, ketangguhan. In disaster context, the word resilience related with ketangguhan, but maybe in different setting, we can also be used the word of ketahanan. In general, resilience, at least for my presentation today, I understand and I define that generally as the ability or capacity of a system to cope with disturbances. And the disturbances itself can be categorized in general as shocks and stresses. Shocks if it is sudden and create big impact, and stresses if we can feel it like maybe almost in our daily life. The system itself could be varied from the individual, families, communities, up to the macro system. So it's very general perspective when we talk about resilience. And when we say as to address or to cope with, actually, in the resilient terms, we can understand the resilience level at least at three different levels. We can say we are, or the system is resilience if we can survive. And then also in the next level, it's not only survive, but we are able to adapt. And eventually, in the very last stage of resilience, we are resilient, either we as the individual or as a system in the macro context. If we can grow better, means that the system is already transformed into a better new system. It means we have succeeded to address any disturbances, regardless it is categorized as shocks or stresses. Resilience itself, when we say at the macro context, not only thinking as types of disaster, as you can see, I try to take some work from scholars, Alexander, that resilience in disaster also related with not only the disaster risk reduction, but also it's very much close with the discourse on the climate change adaptation. Broadly, we talk about the sustainability science, and also there are various types of hazards and risks. So maybe if in Indonesia we have so much focus on natural types of disaster, but actually there are various types of disasters that we need to address properly. As already mentioned also earlier, that Indonesia, every regions have their own characteristic and have different risks to various types of disasters. And based on this kind of overview, I would like to highlight that when we talk about resilience, we need to think or to comprehend or consider multidimensionally and multisectorally. We cannot think, when we talk about disaster resilience, we cannot just think about the disaster management itself, but how we relate this with other related sectors. And it is also in line with the law of disaster in Indonesia, saying that at least in Indonesia, we categorize disasters as a natural disaster, non-natural disasters, and social disasters. So it means it is really a great challenge for us when we talk about disasters. We need to deal with various types of disasters, and every region have different risks for each type of disaster itself. And when we talk about resilience, also there are already a very clear global and national commitment, starting with a lot of indicators stating at our SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and it is already been formalized under the presidential decree since 2017. And the word of resilience itself has have been also clearly stated in our national medium-term development plan. So it means national government has already put significant and clear commitment how to lead the Indonesian development to achieve resilience in different type of sectors: the economic resilience, infrastructure resilience, food security, and so on. Saying that resilience is not only a matter of disaster resilience itself, but how to connect the word resilience with the other sector and other dimension. In community and climate change, there are also clear global commitments stating in the IPCC and UNFCCC since at least 1992 that resilience also related with what we call as climate change resilience. And last but not least, of course, the resilience term itself is also very clearly mentioned in the disaster context, starting with the Hyogo framework in 2005, followed by a Sendai framework. And one important message from this framework is that when we talk about disaster, we need to move not only focusing on disaster management, but also focusing on the disaster risk reduction. Based on that perspective, I would like to offer an idea, a strong movement for us to move from our reactive maybe approach to a better proactive approach, how we can make a kind of adaptive toward transformative, meaning that we need to combine the disaster management effort that we have been doing so far with a more comprehensive disaster risk reduction approach. With these diagrams, I would like to just try to explain when we talk about resilience, it is multidimensional, as already mentioned in many sources, including our national midterm plan. There's economic, there are health, there are livelihood, infrastructures, governance, and it is a very important component to form a disaster resilience. Meanwhile, when we talk about a more focus on disaster resilience, there are disaster management starting from the preparedness up to the construction, which is need to be combined and to be we need to be to make a plan in a comprehensive and intersectoral way. And as the foundation, the foundation for that, as already also mentioned by Pak Deputy and Pak Director, saying that we need a strong collaborative actions. We need to, I think, when we would like to start the reformation, then the most important initial part that we need to do is how to create a strong platform to be able for the whole stakeholders working together, not only the government, not only the community, but how government, community, and others in our Indonesian context called as pentahelix can work together integratively, create a good communication, coordination, cooperation according their potential and roles. So that would be the whole basic, regardless we have a good early warning system, we have a good, let's say, as I have tried to explain in the current slide, that Indonesia already have what we call as local preparedness group or kelurahan or desa tangguh bencana initiated by BNPB. It is a good initiative, provide a strong foundation for the community empowerment process in Indonesia, but it will not lead to a maximum result if we cannot make an integrative and collaborative way to optimize this movement, the community empowerment movement. We know that every ministry, every institution has empowerment programs, but how we can be ensured that each ministry or each institution can support each other or collaborate each other to strengthen the community empowerment, for example, to ensure that we can conduct a robust and well-planned disaster resilience reformation. And there are a lot of examples, not only the community, but also the role of private sectors through the CSR, for example, or there are also a kind of initiative led by the private sectors for to educate the people for raising their awareness to the kind of disaster. There are also a lot of trainings and accompaniment have been done by different agencies supported by international, national, local, philanthropy, NGO, and many other institutions, including academia from the universities. But then how we can ensure that all that stakeholders can move together, work, support each other to create what I call as enabling environment to enhance resilience. I believe with this more effort for us to create a strong network development, and we learned from the past or the current ongoing, all the intervention that we have been done, and there's a changing perception for the whole stakeholders to work or to move from sectoral to the collective work, from incremental to the more comprehensive way, and in the end to achieve what I call as an adaptive governance that can maintain collaborative action, and we can speed up the reformation, moving from to strengthen through strong collaboration by building coalition. So it is needs to create a better platform to integrate horizontal and vertical collaboration among government sectors and among different levels of government, encouraging different stakeholders to participate, involvement, and of course, again, as already mentioned by Pak Deputy and Pak Director, funding is also another key factors, because without funding, innovative funding, we cannot initiate any programs, and we cannot depend on only the government, because the government has limited budget, and that's why it is also an urgent need for us to what I call as develop a kind of platform for innovative funding. Pak Ari, if I didn't mistake, has mentioned about pooling fund. I think it's also another a very excellent initiative to strengthening the platform for us to create what we call as innovative funding. So to end my presentations, I think, or I have at least 3 highlighted things when we talk about enabling environment to promote the disaster resilience. The first is how we create partnership, how we create a strong platform to be able for the whole stakeholders to work collaboratively. And then second, of course, it need to be supported by a good decision-making process, conformity of national, subnational, local policy, and also intersectoral collaboration. And again, yeah, as I have mentioned earlier, the innovative funding, conventional from the government and also non-conventional developing funding support, working together to promote any disaster resilience initiative. So yeah, I think that's all. That thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and looking forward to have a further discussion to all of you. Terima kasih, Pak Yoga.
Thank you, Bu Wiwi. Very interesting discussion, and also even though there's more 5 minutes, over time actually, but I believe that this is something like the baseline for the next discussion will be given later on. So thank you again, Dr. Wiwi from University of Diponegoro. And then the next speaker will be very interesting to have Amit Prodi from the Global Resilient City Network that has experience actually working in 5 continents actually. I think more than 100 cities resilience. And in Indonesia, I think including Semarang actually already been, preparing such a city resilience network globally. So, Pak Amit, the time is yours for the next 10 minutes. Hopefully, you can fit into the available time. Yeah. Time is yours, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me for this. It's a really, really important topic for Indonesia and globally. And I'm happy to be here to share some examples. I'll really talk about 3 parts to my presentation. One will be, why do we need to focus on urban? The second part will be how we as an organization have been working with cities across the world to actually elevate the idea of resilience. What have we been doing? And then provide some basic examples that hopefully can spur some debate and some thinking on your end. So I'm going to share my presentation. Can you see that? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Clearly.
All right.
Please.
So I've been asked to talk about the enabling environment for resilience building. In that context, I think the first point is why urban. And I think we already heard that in the keynote speech. We recognize the disaster risks are continuing to increase. And in cities, one is seeing that, because of the concentration of people and economy and assets, we're seeing a lot of loss in life. We're seeing a lot of loss in property, a lot of loss in assets. And if you start adding the numbers, they're not small by any means. So 2000 flooding in Chennai caused $1 billion estimated damage, affected 280 people. And this is not unique to just this part of the world. Paris experienced floods that cost between 900 and 1.4 billion euros. And these risks around, whether it's flooding, whether it's urban heat, etc., are continuing to increase. So, for example, again, looking at Paris, the estimation is 30 days of extreme heat by the end of the century. Similar estimations can be made in other cities across the world. And, we're looking at effectively cities are losing approximately a quarter of their GDP to disasters. So as it is, if we're in a financially constrained environment and disasters are continuing to impact cities, it's really something that's important to be looking at. The other point I want to highlight is, there are really 3 trends that are going to increase the risk of disasters in cities. We all know about urbanization, expected by 2050. There's an expectation that 2.5 billion more urban residents will be added. A lot of this in Indonesia, a lot of this in India, a lot of this in China, a lot of them in the African countries, cities in Africa. We're seeing rapid changes in cities. Globalization, which on one hand provides opportunity, also increases risks. And we are seeing that right now because of the pandemic. The link between cities has actually led to the spread of this pandemic. So the whole notion of globalization actually brings a lot of transformative changes in cities, which needs to be recognized. And the third one is climate change. I think I don't need to speak about it. All of the audience in this group probably recognize that as well. So while the risks are increasing, I think one also has to recognize that the opportunity to do something is also today, particularly in cities. And the reason I say that is that a lot of the infrastructure that needs to be built in the coming decades to accommodate the people that are moving to cities growing in cities has not been built yet. So we actually have an opportunity to rethink how we're looking at our cities and rethink how we're building our cities so that we're not making the mistakes that we've been making in the past. So for us, focus on urban has been extremely important. Who are we? We are a network of about 100 cities. We started about a decade ago, with funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, we have evolved into over three phases. The first was the ACC CRN, which some of you may be familiar with. The second really was the 100 Resilient Cities program, which was really a substantial investment from the foundation in resilience. And now we've evolved into a smaller but more targeted Resilient Cities network. Our mission now is really to improve the lives of 50 million vulnerable residents in cities. And we're trying to invest funding, capacity building, et cetera, to help cities become more resilient. Our member cities are across the world, Africa, Europe and Middle East, Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the US. And while I think we all appreciate that contexts across the globe is very, very different, I think as an organization, what we've also started to recognize is there are ways for different context cities to actually work together and learn from each other, which is really where one of our core strengths is. Now, the reason I want to highlight our program is because the question around enabling environment for resilience was something that we were wrestling with very early on. I think we all recognize that, disaster management, DRR, this is all, the thinking has been pretty isolated and sectoral. And the intention for us was we need to break those sectoral boundaries. We need to mainstream resilience into the urban governance system. And to do that, we identified 4 methods to do that. So the first one was really establishing a position of a chief resilience officer, which I'll just, oops, sorry. Yeah. Which if you look at the examples I'm sharing here, from San Francisco, from Seoul, from Belfast, from Buenos Aires, this position is somebody very senior in the government level. So for example, in Seoul, it's the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Bureau, who's got the position of Chief Resilience Officer. And the intention was very deliberate on our part. It was, we need to elevate resilience at the level of government where there is an understanding of why resilience is important, and the person who can help to coalesce around that agenda had to have authority to be able to influence, access the mayor and the senior government position level decision makers, but also then influence other departments. So we very deliberately set a position of Chief Resilience Officer, which if you look around the 100 cities, about 80 of them have a Chief Resilience Officer. Whose job really has been to understand why resilience has been important in the city. Sorry, there's background echo here. So that position was really meant to break silos between different government departments and then inform the senior leadership as to why resilience is important. And partly this also helped establish the network of individuals and offices who actually support each other and work with each other. So all of our chief resilience officers actually know each other, can reach out to each other. And by default, we've got a network now of practitioners, senior level government officials who understand the topic of resilience. This is important for setting up an enabling environment. The second part of this was really coming up with a resilience strategy. So my slides need to go in the other direction. Yeah. We also recognize that there needs to be a way for cities to articulate what resilience means for them. So we've supported now, it's actually more than 82. I think it's about 86 cities across the world who have a resilience strategy. And what that is really a very stakeholder engagement driven process. So you talked about your engagement across stakeholders. These strategies that we've helped create for each of these cities are based on stakeholder engagement, heavy stakeholder engagement, trying to articulate why for particular cities resilience is important. And Bhuvi talked about resilience being very broad. In our perspective also, resilience is quite holistic. And then figuring out what are the intervention points to build a city's resilience. So it's holistic, it's participatory, it's action oriented. And what it has allowed us to do is essentially build a narrative on resilience across these different cities, which again become important when you need the leadership in your city and others to understand why they need to focus on resilience. So, the CRO position, the strategy, but then also one needs to understand, there has to be a little bit more deeper understanding of why resilience, how do you actually work on it in that particular city. So for that purpose, we've been actually coming up with reports and knowledge products. And this has been in partnership with a variety of different partners. So capacity building, as has been talked about before, has been instrumental for us as well to help build resilience. I'll go a little bit faster because I think I'm going. We're helping with coming up with tools. So again, what are the kinds of methods and tools of participation, engagement, etc., that can again elevate, prioritize resilience within a city context? And now, because of COVID, we are also starting to look at a toolkit for cities to use to help understand how do they recover from COVID. Chief Resilience Officer, strategy, capacity building, tools, these have been instrumental in our approach to helping cities build resilience. Now, with some examples, I think I want to highlight, we continue to make decisions in cities that I would just call poor decisions. And there's an article on the left which actually helped, it's an article from the New York Times, which shows two maps. There's a map on the left which shows major flooding in 1992 in the city of Houston. And in 2016, the same area is flooded, except that in 1992, that area was not developed. And by 2016, it had been developed. And because it had been developed, the loss of life and loss of property was incredible. And the whole argument has been that, we are continuing to build in places without understanding the risk of what we are doing, or so we don't understand the risk. We continue to build, and we're putting assets and people in harm's way. We need to change that paradigm. So we really need to start understanding risks. And as an organization, we've worked with several cities, and I just want to give an example on the right, the city of Da Nang, where we worked with CSIRO from Australia, where Da Nang is highly prone to storms. And what we did is we looked at a small area and we did some, analysis of housing, and essentially came up with what are the vulnerabilities, and then help the city start to actually put investments that would be more targeted towards reducing the risk in those particular hotspots. So again, targeting the investment based on an understanding of risk. And so, and the next session will talk a lot about, risk, understanding risks. But I think it's really, really important for us to start understanding the risks in our city urban context, so that our decisions are more, based on an awareness of that risk. And I think there are methodological approaches out there. So it's not the first time I'm talking about it. I'm sure you've all heard about it, but there are methods that start to lay out that whole gamut of understanding what the hazard is from an urban point of view, understanding what is the exposure, understanding the vulnerability, understanding the risk, and then starting to actually bring that into different forms of policies and instruments. So there's a guidebook that the ADB had put out, which I had contributed to, which talks about risk-sensitive land use planning. So again, understanding your land, understanding how this, so that image on the upper right is really showing that, we are living in cities in an urban context where the risk varies. And once we understand that risk, we can actually start to target our policies to reduce the risk. So we're not actually continuing to build in places we shouldn't be building. And so that's on the land use policy side. But also the example at the bottom is, these are flood maps on the floor, and this is from Sydney. And you have asset managers, these are utilities, these are hospitals, these are others who actually have assets in the city who are sitting down and trying to understand, okay, if there is a flood, what happens to my asset, and how does that, what do I need to do to reduce the risk, but also how does my asset link to the next asset? So if the power plant fails, what happens? So this is really starting to make decisions based on an understanding of what risks you might be facing. We are also trying to break silos through innovation, and we talk about this example from Paris quite a bit. I think Paris faces several resilience challenges. In this context, there's increasing heat, there's flooding, etc. And what the government said was, we need to think about an innovative way to address our resilience challenges. And they found that they had these assets, the public schools, that if you look at the little map, they're spread around the entire city. And they said, can we start to think about greening our schools? And by greening our schools and linking them to the problem of heat and linking them to the problem of flooding, etc., can we use this particular asset, this particular piece of infrastructure to actually reduce the risks that we face because of heat and flooding? And what they did is, by starting to green their schools, they're actually effectively providing safe havens for the surrounding community to, come in during a very hot day. They're actually increasing their green canopy, and they're increasing the potential for reduced, flood water, basically collecting water so that their flood risk is reduced as well. So using an existing asset and then saying, by greening that particular asset that belongs to the government, we are actually starting to help build resilience and reducing some of the risks that are related to our resilience. So again, innovating to address resilience, innovating to actually, thinking about the, movie we talked about, there is a certain holistic perspective one needs, and effectively by innovating, we're trying to break the sectoral boundaries and build, that understanding of a holistic resilience for the city. Sorry. And this is not just unique to Paris. There is now a whole big program going on in Chennai where there's a focus on urban horticulture, again, using schools as the central space, starting to say, can we start greening schools, increase the tree canopy, and by that effectively reduce, build upon a lot of linkages that are associated with urban greens. Same thing is happening in Rotterdam. So again, these are innovations that are trying to break sectoral boundaries to build resilience at a small city scale. We're also doing this through organizing competitions. So we partnered with the Dutch government and AIIB and the global UN Habitat, etc., where we brought in innovators to look at 3 cities. So Semarang is actually part of this. So Semarang, Chennai, and Khulna, where it was an open competition, which basically said, the city faces challenges around water. We need innovation on how does the city address it. And one of the solutions that came out in Chennai, just as an example, is Chennai faces both flooding and drought. So there's either flooding or there's drought. I mean, it's literally a cycle of 1 year there'll be massive flooding, second or third year there might be a drought. And this design team here, which was a integrated team of landscape architects, flood engineers, local, international, etc., they identified that the city of Chennai has over 1,000 tanks. Now, these tanks are not connected to their water system currently, but historically they were connected to the water system. And they said, if we start to restore these tanks and use these tanks for both flood mitigation, so storage of water, the space exists. So this is not a question of land that doesn't exist. The land exists, the space exists. Can we rehabilitate these tanks and start using them for storing water during flood times, and then that becomes a way to provide water during water scarcity. So using again an existing piece of infrastructure that's not being utilized and rethinking its purpose and saying, can that actually help us build resilience? So trying to break silos through innovation and shared learning. And I think I'm coming to my end because of conscious of time. We are very supportive of peer-to-peer learning. So on the left, I think all of you by now have familiar with the example from Rotterdam, where Rotterdam uses multipurpose spaces for their flood management. So this is a plaza they have created as part of a larger flood management strategy, which is a public open space. And when there's excessive water, this plaza functions as a holding space for that water. So again, reducing the need for hard infrastructure for flooding. The same idea now is being tried out in Surat. And so what we've done is by helping cities learn from each other over time, this is now the engineer talking to the engineer, the designer talking to the designer and saying, let's help you actually operationalize an idea that we've implemented in our cities. There's a need in your city, and we will help you with that implementation. This peer-to-peer learning has been incredibly important. This peer-to-peer learning has been long in the making. So it took us about a year plus getting the CROs to talk to each other, getting to the leadership to talk to each other, getting Surat to understand that they can learn something from Rotterdam, which around water management, getting Rotterdam to say, yes, we want to help Surat, getting them to break through the cultural boundaries, and then starting to understand, how do you actually do something innovative in a city that's different from yours, but you're bringing experience that you actually tried out in your own city. So the peer-to-peer learning has been incredibly important for us as well as a network. Oops. And the last one I want to highlight is really, so we've not, we've worked in cities across the world, but in one particular instance, we've actually worked with the national government as well. So this is in India, where in 2018, we actually helped set up an urban resilience unit at the national level. The intention was that unit will advise the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs on the whole, the whole notion of resilience. And that unit became sort of a think tank advising the ministry, but connected to us as a network. So we became, they became a conduit for ideas, conduit for experiences, etc. What has happened is that 2 years later, the ministry has actually now set up a climate smart center for cities, which is focused on trying to say, so they've come up with the framework, they've come out with the funding mechanism, they've come out with a way of cities in the Indian context. And right now, I think there's 139 cities who are actually starting to look at climate resilience in their urban system. So it was an idea that was, set up through our help in 2018, elevating the whole discourse on resilience for the national government, which has now come down and become an official climate smart center at the national level. And I'm happy to share this example later if anybody wants to. I will stop with that. I think that was my last slide. But essentially what I'm trying to highlight really is, why cities are important. Some of the ways as an organization we have helped build a stronger enabling environment, and then just some examples to share where you're starting to understand resilience is not just a sectoral approach. Resilience doesn't require a sectoral approach. It actually requires multiple dimensions. And there are experiences now that can be shared globally that can actually help convince your decision makers to actually take forward that approach. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. It's very interesting. And thank you as well for taking us traveling around the world, actually, in 20 minutes. From Houston, Sydney, Paris, Rotterdam, Chennai, Semarang, and also Kulna. It's very interesting for having you presenting all the experience working in very important cities in building the resilience down there. So the first step already been accomplished from the enabling environment to enhance resilience. And there's some keynotes that's already been recorded here. One is from Bu Wiwi about the communication, coordination, and collaboration, which is very important. And also partnership, governance, and of course, innovative funding. That's one of the baseline towards the enhancing the resilience. And then from Amit's presentation, I'd like to get three main keywords here about the holistic approach, the participatory, and also the action-oriented. It is very important to build up, the resilience, not only in the cities, but also in the region as well as in the countries. So thank you very much, Dr. Wiwi and Amit Proti for the very wonderful presentation. And then the next theme, we are going to talk about the data. Data is very, very crucial. And as presented and also directed by Pak Deputy, Pak Rudi, Pak Medi, Pak Director, and also Pak Hari, Director of the BNPB, data and information is a must. It's a very crucial, something like a baseline actually towards enhancing the resilience. So first speaker will be Pak Petra Kareci. He's now working with the Pulse Lab. It's the big data's, institution actually, initiated by Australian government and as well as Bappenas. And now he's trying to, share with us how the data on the disaster is very crucial aspect that needs to be taken into account at the very beginning of every step of the way towards the resilience. So, Pak Petra, the time is yours. 10 minutes, hopefully. Please, Pak.
Thank you very much, Pak Yoga, and greetings to you. Sorry about the background noise. There's some announcements happening, but it's a real honor and pleasure to be able to participate in this important event. I'd just like to quickly, firstly, introduce Pulse Lab Jakarta, and again, apologies about the background announcement. Pulse Lab Jakarta was established in 2012, actually based on a collaboration or an MOU between the United Nations and the government of Indonesia. And it was actually the first of its kind in working on looking at big data and data innovations in 2012, working at a regional level from in Asia and the Pacific. And so I've only joined Pulse Lab Jakarta, Pak Yoga, a year ago. So it's been amazing for me to look at what the government of Indonesia and the United Nations has developed through this facility, and the foresight in looking at the potential use of big data and new data sources or emerging data sources in combination with conventional data sets. So actually, since 2013, as you can see from this data journey, Pulse Lab Jakarta started with social media, but then started bringing in other data sources from drone imagery to satellite imagery, mobile network data, and then started looking at combinations of between conventional data sets like Susanas, BPS data, or PODES with emerging data sets. And one of the key lessons we've learned here is that new data sources or big data really needs to be complementary with conventional or traditional data sets by Yoga. So I think that's one thing that we really need to bear in mind, that it has to be in combination and that the data sets are really complementary. Just quickly, some of the examples and some of the lessons that we'll learn from Pulse Lab Jakarta's experience, because as one of the first facilities of its kind, it's really interesting how a lot of these prototypes or platforms have created inspiration and also being used by other countries. So HazeGazer looked at imagery from social media, Twitter, Instagram, mass media, and then used the images to analyze the level of haze or asap kebakaran, and use that to also see how it was impacting on different populations. And this at that time was used and installed at the president's office in Jakarta. But then a key lesson learned from here was that it required underlying partnerships with the data providers. So what happened was that the data providers, when they changed their protocols or they change their procedures, then that stopped the flow of data into platforms such as this. And so this is one key lesson, I think, in developing data innovations, that we really need to look at the underlying partnerships that is required between data providers and then data users, particularly with policymakers. So one example is Haze Gazer. Another example is Vampire. This is being used, is now being adopted by a World Food Program and is has been promoted globally as one of the key platforms to be able to look at vulnerability to food production due to climate change and anomalies in weather patterns by yoga. And so this has been a platform that then provides support on early warning systems where there's potential of drought, where there's a potential also of floods, and so it's another example of combining satellite data, weather data, climate data to be able to predict anomalies and then create strategies to ensure the resilience of our communities. This example is where we've used telco data, and the one I'm showing you is an example from what we did for the earthquake following the earthquake in Palu, but it was actually based on models that we developed in the Pacific with in Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Fiji, how to use mobile data to be able to look at the mobility, where people are moving, and which also allows for strategies in seeing how to where to distribute logistics, but also to see how the affected area is then returning to normalcy, and then helping government in determining policies for economic recovery by seeing where populations are tracking and returning back to their original locations. Another example is Mind, where it's combining from data from Twitter, Wikipedia, Google Trends, and what this particular application does is allow a policymaker to identify, let's say there's a natural disaster in Poso, where is the closest large airport, and what's the route that can be used that's still that is still open for transport to take logistics. But it also then measures or shows the elevation, the condition of the roads, which then helps in determining the cost of transporting and distributing logistics and how much time it will take to distribute logistics to a particular area. And this combines a whole lot of data sets, as I said. So these are just examples in saying that there's a lot of things that we can do if the data is available. The question is, what is our condition of our data ecosystem, which is related to disaster management by yoga, and how strongly is it linked with the broader social and economic development ecosystem? So in a sense, pentahelix in terms of the various institutions and organizations that are supplying and providing the data that can be used to improve the strategies and also in strengthening the resilience towards disaster. And what was interesting is where we used COVID-19 as an example to see what is the condition of different provinces in publicly reporting cases of COVID-19. And what we found, interestingly, was that not all provinces provided practical standard ways of reporting COVID-19. The dark blue squares are from provinces that were very effective and in publicly reporting COVID-19. They were consistent. They used good updated data. They regularly updated, and they provided the data in websites that allowed for other parties to directly extract the data and create analyses from their websites. But unfortunately, as you can see also, like in the red, there are still a lot of provinces where they have not been reporting COVID-19 in a consistent manner, in a way in which data can be directly extracted. Some were using YouTube, some were using Instagram, and this just gives a really COVID-19 helped us to see the actual condition of how public data, Indonesia's public data ecosystem was performing during this current COVID pandemic. And I think these lessons show that there are some underlying aspects that really need to be addressed, which then impact on the effectiveness of any data innovation that we want to develop and introduce for Indonesia. So from this, we feel that in terms of addressing data gaps for natural disaster response, we really need to strengthen our baseline data, where we need to agree on the baseline data among data producers and humanitarian actors, and agree on the framework to ensure data accessibility and data sharing. There needs to be data standards. There needs to be a clarity in terms of the metadata, how to structure the information and the data to ensure that it's clear, and also it allows for easy extraction and use of the data. And that also links to interoperability, where we still see, based on the COVID-19 baselining, that we can see that there's issues in terms of interoperability, being the readiness of data and shared protocols to ensure effective interaction between systems, approaches, and platforms. So I guess relating to what was presented by Ibu Wiwik and also Amit, that we really need to build interdisciplinary teams where it's not just around high-level policymakers and academics, but right down to the communities. So how to create whole of society approaches to disaster management and resilience. As Amit was saying, how do we create that enabling environment, and particularly in terms of data, where artificial intelligence and data analytics can be harnessed for meaningful action. And then how do we combine conventional and non-conventional data so we can improve and create efficiencies for humanitarian responses? And then how do we establish shared value humanitarian data partnerships? For instance, on the Palu's example, that's where we were able to access some of the data from Telkomsel, but for COVID-19, because there was no pre-existing agreements with Telkomsel, that we weren't able to use or access data from Telkomsel to help in support policymaking for COVID-19. And so we need to find the shared values that it's important for Telkomsel and other telco companies, as well as with government, to be able to share and use the data collectively for responsible humanitarian responses. And then I really like what Amit was saying, that using data innovations, in this sense, data innovations, not only as solutions for impact, but as a way to break down barriers and break down silos between different organizations and individuals that should be collaborating for improved data systems to strengthen our resilience. So just looking at that, final point is that, we could look at the approaches in developing analytic partnerships for natural disasters, where we identify, connect, and engage multiple parties, expertise, and resources. And by doing that, between think tanks, data providers, policy analysis, policymakers, data scientists, etc., we can use these data innovations to break down silos and strengthen overall data. Thank you, Pak Yoga.
Thank you, Pak Petra. It's very interesting for having all the intervention actually from the Pulse Lab in contributing to the natural disaster management. And I believe his geyser, the vampire, as well as the mine management information for natural disaster, which is very interesting. And of course, the Central Sulawesi migration, detection is also very wonderful actually, to trace actually the people after the disaster in 2018. And I tried to put the three keywords that's already been presented by Petra the accelerating analytic partnership, which is very crucial, keywords that needs to be well taken into account in building up the disaster data. Thank you again, Pak Petra. And then the next speaker is actually my guru, actually, Pak Puji. Pak Puji already been my guru since Aceh, and also as the midwives of the disaster management law in 2007, and working quite globally, actually, with UN as well, the final one with the UN SCAP. And I think in one slide, he tried actually to expose how the data and information is very, very crucial in the building up, disaster resilience. And I also attended yesterday, he, chairing the disaster literacy webinar, maybe can be shared to all of us in the next 10 minutes. The time is, and the floor is yours, Pak Puji, my guru. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Yoga. Then the other day, the president of the Human Initiative called me as his mentor. Now you call me as your guru. This thing got to stop sometime, okay? But Pak Yoga, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Like Pak Petra, let me introduce very briefly what Puji Center is. This is an organization that happened to have the same name like mine in a small village in Yogyakarta. We are a knowledge management organization that deal with disaster management and humanitarian. And part of our passion is really, instead of running around responding to disaster, we try to collect and upgrade knowledge to become, the one that could be shared as good practices. Now, let me start with congratulating Bappenas, Pak Yoga, for implementing the directive of the president to undertake the reform on humanitarian resilience, the disaster resilience. And part of that, Bappenas' solution to place the data as one of the first prerequisite, in fact, to take a step forward in the next year and onward. Now, we also, I dare say that the Indonesian disaster management system has been quite advanced in Asia Pacific. And I say this not as a bystander. I really say it from the internal, player, as you said, as one of the designer of the disaster legislation in Indonesia and many other parts of the system. And together with you, Pak Yoga, we also taught the beginning of the long-term plan for disaster management. We spent time in Bangkok to cook the idea on how to match this with the centennial celebration of Indonesia. That being said, though, Pak Yoga, I have to say that the disaster management system in Indonesia, and this is not unique to our country, is hardly based on evidence, right? A lot of what we are doing in disaster management is either reactive to disaster events or being inspired by the ideology of disaster risk management, that it is a good thing to do. Meanwhile, the development planning system under your leadership, among others, Pak Yoga, has embarked on risk-informed development planning. So now you see the gaps between the national stride, if you like, and the internal property of disaster management that is lagging, right? I know for a fact that disaster management data in Indonesia is skimming the surface. The INARIS, IRBI, DB, with all respect and appreciation, it is a national skimming of data that is, I think, experiencing discontinuity and disconnect with the field. Now, one sector to the other in disaster is also disconnected. That's quite an issue. And then as Pak Petra is saying, there has been inconsistencies, the way we define disasters, incompatibility, and in effect become incomparable. Now, the sad part of that, the disaster management has only become reactive, and we haven't been able to be predictive, which is the heart of the Sendai framework. we globally have to be more predictive. We must be able to project what the risks look like. And we are unable to do that because we don't have the data, right? And at the same time, disaster management, because of its unique and idiosyncrasy, has not been able to communicate with other sectors in development planning. The disaster data, by and large, are emergency-oriented, relief-oriented, cannot be compared to agricultural, education data, health data. Then it doesn't build this consistent house of Indonesia development planning as envisioned by SDGs. So those are the issues that we have at hand. But that's not all hopeless. As Petra was saying, a lot of things are going on in Indonesia. And the opportunities are there. One, definitely the President's directive is one, which is I'm very grateful for. And then President's directive on Indonesia One Data, or Satu Data Indonesia, is another opportunity in front of us, in which Secretariat is also in Bappenas, by the way. All right, so it's at the same house with you. Disaster is always here. It's become a systemic vulnerability for Indonesia. So there is no day without disaster conversation in Indonesia. So the data must be there. That's a good thing, in a sense. And then BNPB has already have variety of databases, as I said, INARISK personal, IRB, DB, and what's not, right? And the National Statistical Office of Indonesia has been inserting some disaster-related basic data in its exercise and in census and village potentials, socioeconomic census, and all that. Now, outside there, as I mentioned earlier, there is SDG that already put quantitative measuring as part of its defining feature. We have Sendai framework that also boiled down to measurable targets. And of course, I have to congratulate Siap Siaga as well for being here to be part of the conversation and supporting the efforts, including on disaster information management, like what is practicing in Bali. Let me congratulate Siap Siaga on that as well. So I've reviewed quickly the challenges in front of us and the chances, right? Now, what have been going on? I personally have been developing disaster statistics framework when I was with ESCAP in Bangkok for the last 7 years or so. And now I'm serving as a senior advisor to the Asia Pacific Technical Working Group on Disaster Statistics. On that, that framework somehow mature, but I can say with certainty that Indonesia is the only one so far who has been implementing this. So again, we have to tap ourselves on the shoulder that we're doing the right thing. I have been working with BPS and BNPB to develop a national statistical framework for disaster-related statistics for the last year and a half. And we have been completing that. We have completed that part under the auspices of Satu Data Indonesia. So that consists of 4 types of statistics, Pak Yoga. One is how do we count and account disaster risks? Statistician says, if you can think of a concept, you can measure it. So on that, we must be able to measure risks. What are the hazards? What are the vulnerability? What are the capacity? And all that. That laughter is not from me, by the way. It's from Sulawesi, I think. Okay. Number 2 is statistic on disaster occurrence. This, we have been working with BNPB, try to be disciplined. What is it considered as disaster? So, Pak Director for Early Warning is saying there has been 16,000 disaster events reported so far in Indonesia. I'll bet you, Pak Yoga, the 16,000 are not necessarily pointing to disaster events. Some of them could be accidents. Some are simply occurrence. They may not fully qualify to be called disaster, but we simply don't have the quantitative definition of what disaster is, what constitutes disaster. So we need to agree on that. And then we can count what kind of disaster event happening, occurrences, when it starts, when it ends, and all that. And number 3 is on impact. On impact, Pak Yoga, you and I have been working over the years with colleagues from the World Bank, from ADB, UNDP, try to quantify the disaster impacts and turn it into post-disaster need assessment and using it as a basis for action plan for recovery. These are one of your babies, Pak Yoga. I don't know who the mother is, but this is your baby. You better be responsible for this. Okay. We have been doing this, and this is one part of the statistic that we need to nail it down. And finally, Pak Yoga, this is where I need to fall back with the colleague in Bappenas, is how to account the expenditure on disaster. How many trillion of rupiah already committed, allocated, and disbursed for disaster management, so that we could actually compare expenditure against the result. It's in Indonesia mid-range development planning. You have decided that by 2024, the damage and losses, economic losses from disaster must be reduced by 0.021%. Now that percentage should be translated to numbers, rupiah, damage, and all that. So these are four components of disaster statistics that we're developing. Again, we are not operating in zero. We have disaster data in BNPB. We have sectoral data with the ministries. We have the BPS with basic data. And hopefully, we also have new data from Pulse Lab and others. And we need to bring them all together to become data sources. We need to assemble them to become meaningful, so that it become comparable, not only against time, disaster now and disaster in future and the past should be comparable, but it should also be comparable across geographical territories. And hopefully, when we stick to SDGs and Sendai, it should be comparable among countries, so that Indonesia could say with straight face, our risk reduction has been more effective compared to other countries, for example. Now, finally, let me just take one last minute, Pak Yoga, to look at my crystal ball and see what the future looks like, right? I think Indonesia, being the only country that I know in Asia Pacific that implement disaster statistics, it will continue to be the champion. It needs to have the interministerial buy-in, and I'm glad again that Bappenas already take this on. Pak Bambang, the former deputy for macroeconomy, has taken on, and now Bappenas has decided that Yogyakarta province will be the pilot for government work plan for 21. 5 other provinces are there in the lineup for the following year, and 5 more. So hopefully in 3 years we have 11 provinces, as sources of good practices. And I heard from here and say, you have to confirm with me, Pak Yoga, that Siap Siaga project in Bali is also investing on improving disaster information management. And I urge them, I persuade them, I cajole them, please don't embark on new separate undertaking. Let me ask them, please embark on the similar path so that we actually leverage our experience into one direction. And then that's being said, in 2022, Indonesia will be hosting the global platform on disaster reduction. And I would like to submit, if we do this correctly, then disaster statistics could be one of the centerpiece that we could be proud of. In closing, Pak Yoga, I would like to say that our disaster risk reduction has been making much more progress for a couple of decades, but it does need to have one more element to make it more robust, that is evidence-based. Number 2, we already have the infrastructure of the data. Now we need to go down and dive into technicalities, and I look forward to work closely with Bappenas, with BNPB, with the BPS and other stakeholders to bring this into reality and fruition. That's my 10 minutes, Pak Yoga. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my guru, Dr. Pujiono. It's very interesting for having a very robust, keywords. There's a lot of keywords actually. That's not the keywords, but the sentence actually from yours. At least the final statement, how to strengthen the evidence base, for disaster management is very, very crucial point that needs to be taken into account. And of course, the disaster statistic is one of the baseline towards building up the resilience. And of course, you remind us about the next GPDRR 2022, as well as how the Siap Siaga needs to be, contributing in such a very important, event. Thank you so much, Pak Puji, for a very interesting presentation, and all the 4 contents about the challenges, the contents, the changes, and also the prospects is very well taken and very well noted, and need to be well discussed maybe later on. Thank you so much. And then the final one, I'm sorry for the participants, please be patient to have your question. And we have already been collecting more than 15 questions actually in the Bitly. But we would like to continue with 2 final presentations from a very well-known and distinguished scholars. First is Professor Carl Kim from the University of Hawaii. And I believe that he would like to share about how the Pacific, region experience in building up the resilience under the community-based also multi-hazard early warning system. And then the final one will be from Mr. Lalit from ADPC as the final intervention presentation. So the next 10 to maybe 12 minutes, I believe Professor Kim will share to us about his presentation on the people-centered resilience. The time is yours, Professor Kim, please.
Well, selamat pagi. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's almost selamat
Very
siang.
clear. Selamat pagi.
Yeah.
Selamat
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good morning and aloha. I'm really happy and honored to be presenting with you all for 2 reasons. I mean, first, I think this is a very important topic. And second, as an urban planning professor for many, many years, it's great to see so many planners and people who think about planning. And I think there are very important connections. My talk is really based on the fact that a year ago, none of us were thinking about the pandemic or COVID-19. As Ibu Wiwi pointed out, we've been forced into reacting to this pandemic. And I think what I'm hoping to do is to show some of the ways in which we've had to pivot and focus on the same issues about environment, big data, and people-centered resilience during this pandemic. So if my slides will move. Okay. Yeah, so what I want to do is, again, talk a bit about detection, alert, and warning systems and how that connects to effective response, evacuation, sheltering, but with a big focus on vulnerable populations. And I think one of the things a people-centered approach requires is a big focus on health and safety and security. That is being people-centered. And of course, as other speakers have pointed out, this is a function of our exposure, our sensitivities, and our adaptive capacity. A lot of the research, the data I work with, deals with accidents and emergencies and disasters and catastrophes. And I think there's a way that we can use this data to identify different types of protective actions. I direct, in addition to being a urban planning professor, I direct a FEMA center, which is authorized by the US Congress. And now we've trained more than 50,000 first responders and emergency managers just in the US. And as part of this, we've also been working with USAID, Mercy Corps, Hope Worldwide for many years in Indonesia, developing and delivering different types of training classes on natural hazards. I mean, we share in Hawaii all the same hazards. that you have in Indonesia, earthquakes and tsunamis and volcanoes and then other climate threats and hazards. And so I think there's a really good opportunities to collaborate and work together. A lot of the work that I do is focused on accidents, which are really low probability, high consequence events. And what we want to do is to prevent these events from turning into emergencies, disasters, and catastrophes. These days, I'm also editing an interdisciplinary journal on transportation research, because I think transportation is so central to resilience. And it brings together these human, vehicle, roadway, and environmental factors that I think are really relevant to how we think about preparedness, response, and recovery. And I want to say that a lot of the same theories and ideas and tools and ways that we think about wearing seatbelts apply to things like building seawalls or reducing our trips or taking other sorts of protective actions. And really, this comes down to the understanding of the movement of people and the disease and risk between communities, but also within communities. So many of the same tools, the excellent big data session that was just before, I think gives us an opportunity to take some of the same tools and data that we're using and re-engineer them for warning systems about the pandemic as well too. So I want to talk about some of these kinds of because as of yet, the vaccine is not there. And so we've had to rely on these kind of non-pharmaceutical interventions, things like quarantine and isolation and social distancing. And so I think that there are opportunities to integrate big data systems. I just published a paper about some work in Florida that we use using traffic sensors. And what was really interesting was that the drop in people's movement was not driven so much by the government orders, by the quarantine or the isolation orders. It was really driven by the closure of schools, the closure of Disneyland and businesses and activities. So that's a very, very important to focus on the activities. The other thing that I think is really also important to do is to focus on vulnerable populations. We collected all the handyvan or persons with disability data in Honolulu and really looked at the staggering reduction in not just movements, but also in services that they are receiving because of the lockdown social distancing orders that were done as well too. Some of the other work that we're doing involves developing different types of apps for tracking and tracing those who are exposed to the disease. I can talk more about these, but we're looking at both screening technologies as well as exposure notification based upon different types of emerging technologies. It's interesting because we have several big projects with Google, with Street View, that involve visualization of data and hazards before and after. We acquired all the same cameras for generating Street View imagery. But what we're trying to do is to use many of our machine learning, machine visioning techniques to be able to determine whether or not people are wearing masks, complying with the social distancing requirements, and so forth. And so I think there are many different ways in which that we can use these technologies. A very good friend of mine, actually, is Harlan Hale with USAID. He was saying we're fighting the pandemic all wrong. He was very involved with the Ebola response in Africa, and he said we should be fighting the pandemic like it's a wildfire, and then throw everything that we have at it. And so I think we need a multi-layered, multi-faceted approach that involves testing and tracing and tracking and using technology But in order for all this to come together, there has to be effective training. And that's, I think, a big part of what we're doing. And I think it also applies to the vaccines and treatment as well, too. There's some really important, interesting things that are going on right now in terms of the reopening of economies. You know, Hawaii is an island state like Indonesia. And so I think that there are real opportunities to look at the differences between places that open up really quickly, how you open up the economy, how do you allow tourism to go? And then it's almost like a quasi-experimental design for us. And so we're doing a lot of work looking at the ways in which we can look at the changes that are occurring in the economy. One of the things is these ongoing threats exist. We still have hurricanes, we still have flooding during the pandemic. And so a lot of our work involves how do we look at these ongoing hazards and integrate the social distancing requirements for evacuation and these vulnerable locations that are affected by, people may not want to evacuate because of the social distancing problems or the fear of getting the disease. A lot of our work also involves doing alternatives to the typical hardening of the infrastructure, building seawalls or using revetment. And so we're very much interested in green infrastructure, green solutions, living shorelines, and other tactics. And I think that fits nicely because we know that sunlight, good circulation also can help kill the virus as well too. So promoting these types of changes, I think, are good. You know, we do a lot of research, and I have to say that hazards involves 5% science, and I'm talking about physical science, environmental science, and geology, and 95% social science. And a lot of this is trying to understand human behavior, not just in terms of evacuation, but actually in terms of building, design, and what they will do in the hazard zones. And I think this is really challenging because of the diversity of information sources, the concerns about the credibility of information, and then also changes in behavior that occur as a result of this. And I think that there are really strong opportunities for collaboration and minimizing exposure and thinking about urban planning as risk reduction. It's interesting. This slide comes from the International Tsunami Information Center that we do a lot of work with, and I think the approach to focusing on warning, combining together education and then the work of different groups from the community to scientists is the way that we build a people-oriented center towards disaster risk reduction and resilience. So I know that my time is short. I hope that sometime in the future that we can gather in person, hopefully in the near future. I look forward to more discussion and am open to other questions and comments about the work that we do. But again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim, for sharing all those important, aspect on the people-centered, what we call at the final presentation slides. The community preparedness is collaborative. It's a very, very communicative and also very important, keywords actually that we can take into the conclusion of your presentation. And I believe that your presentation on the disaster during pandemic is also very, important, and crucial aspect that need to be learned from, several kind of, situation, like globally, actually, not only in Indonesia or United States in this case. Thank you again, Professor Kim. And then the final intervention will be given by Lalit Kumar Dashora from ADPC. And I believe that everybody knows ADPC is one of the very well-known institution in an Asia region related with the preparedness. And I hope that Lalit will present about and share about the experience of ADPC working on the building up the disaster resilience in many other countries in Asia as well as globally. Please, Lalit, the time is yours for 10 to 12 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Prayoga. I hope I am audible.
Yes, please.
Yes. So, Salamat Sore and Salamat Pagi to all the participants. And this is Lalit Teshwara from ADPC Bangkok office. And I will be talking about the people-centered multi-hazard early warning systems in Asia and the Pacific, where we are working with the various international agencies. So I will briefly introduce the ADPC, which is the intergovernmental organizations with more than 15 organizations as a member countries of this particular organization, and the host country is the the Thailand. So I will quickly go to the numbers. So as per the WMO report, which was published in 2020, I think if we see the overall disaster risk scape, the contribution of hydromet hazards are more, and especially the floods and cyclone. And we can see if the number of casualties and the economic losses due to floods and cyclones are more and more. If you see the requirement of multi-hazard early warning systems, and again the WMO conducted a survey with all national meteorological and hydrological services (NMHS) in Asia and Pacific and all over the globe. Many countries they express that okay, they already have the national level multi-hazard early warning system, but what about the community level, and what about the local level, and what about the city level? So if we see the nationally determined contribution requirement by Paris Agreement, more than 88% countries they requested for the multi-hazard early warning system in their NDCs, especially by LDCs, the least developed countries and small island developing states. So if I go to the quick definition of the multi-hazard early warning system, so there are three major components here. One is the technology and the time. And these are the basic component of any early warning systems, and integration of the information which is required for the people, communities are very important. So I will not go into the detail, but if you see the pillars of multi-hazard early warning system suggested by the WMO, there are four major pillars, which is the disaster risk knowledge. Second is the detection, monitoring, and forecasting capacities. Fourth is the warning, dissemination, and communication. And fifth is the preparedness and response capabilities. And last but not least is the governance. And that is also very important to understand the overall setup in the country. If you see the setup of these particular themes and pillars, the risk knowledge, which is very much related to hazard assessment, elements at risk, and vulnerabilities. If we talk about the monitoring and warning system, where, what, when, these are the key questions come in our mind, that how much rainfall will be there, or when the cyclone will do the landfall, and what are the dissemination and communication protocols and redundancies we have in the countries or in the provinces, and then what are the response capabilities of NDMOs and then provincial disaster management organizations at local level. So I will quickly talk about the two interventions which right now we are working. One is with the Norwegian government with the help of Met Norway and Norwegian Geotechnical Institute in three countries, especially in two countries in three cities. This is in Vietnam and Myanmar. In Vietnam, we are working the two cities called Nam Dinh and Mai Tho. Nam Dinh is very close to Hanoi in the northern Vietnam, and Mai Tho is very close to Ho Chi Minh City in south. And then city called Dalat, which is it is actually a part of Yangon city, but is actually upcoming and promising land for Yangon city to develop in the future. So these are a few locations which was discussed with the government of Myanmar and the government of Vietnam, and we identified these locations in the two countries. I will quickly go to the key activities which we are working in these countries. So we started with the multi-hazard capacities, needs, and gap assessment in the country at the national level, provincial level, and city level. And then we developed a TCNA, which is the training capacities and need assess as well. And then we started with the second, which is very important one, is the multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment at the local level, at the city level. And then we identified the hotspots in the city as well. And then we did a climate modeling from GCM to RCM with the downscaling. And then now we are working with the CMIP 6, which is coming sometime in the next year with AR6 report from IPCC. And then we are also working with the weather research and forecasting WRF models. We are working with the improved near real-time observation through remotely sensed observations. So most of the time in many countries, there are in-situ data is not available. Many times there are main-made or main-handled instruments are there, and many times there is an error in that one. So now we are also using to calibrate and validate those instruments and information from those instruments. We are using the remotely sensed data, which is the Earth observation data. Location-specific forecast we are providing in Myanmar. We started already working with the YCDC, which is the Yangon City Development Council. We are developing a climate portal and visualization for these 3 cities. We are also developing a standard operating procedures. There are, it's not like that this is new, but we are improving with the existing, the new data and new protocols. We are doing a capacity building with the Department of Meteorology and Hydrology, which is the NMHS in Myanmar, and VNHMA, which is the Vietnam National Meteorological and Hydrological Administration. We are also working with the VNDMA and DDM in Myanmar and in Vietnam. We are actually designing and establishing a city-level EOC, Emergency Operations Center, in all 3 cities. And some of the instruments we are installing, especially the automatic weather stations, and also with the automatic rain gauges and city level, the river level, the gauge stations. So these are like few very quick activities we are right now doing. And we are also working with the Urban Development Authority, which is the YCDC, to basically develop the guidelines for the new development in the Dala area, which is a new coming and new promising land for the city, where they are planning to have a new airport and as well as the seaport in that area. So these are like some of the glimpses, and I'm again linking with the pillars of WMO, which is the first pillar, which is the disaster risk knowledge. So we have conducted a complete detailed hazard risk assessment of Dala Township, which is the south of the Yangon city, but at the close of the Yangon River and the another river, which is the Ayurvedi one. And this is the place where they want to develop the new port and new township for the Yangon, and they will be it's a part of the greater Yangon area. We are actually establishing a city level EOC in all 3 cities, and we are actually participating with the University of Salford and Think Lab, and under the Mobilize tool, we are planning to put a very good display boards for the decision makers, so that they can see that, okay, what's going on in the city, what is the risk upcoming from the upstream, what is the rainfall there, what is the surge level in the sea. And so there will be a multiple platform and display options for decision makers based in city, as well as for the Department of Disaster Management at provincial level in Yangon. Some of the key activities related to detection, monitoring, and forecasting. So we did a detailed assessment of the multi-hazard early warning system from the national level to subnational level and the local level. And then we started training with the ClimSoft for the Department of Hydrology and Meteorology. And then we also did a trainings on the flood modeling, especially for the pluvial and fluvial flood modeling, which is the riverine and urban flood modeling. And similarly, exercises we conducted with the VNHMA and VNDMA in Myanmar, in Hanoi, and in Ho Chi Minh City. These are some of the tools we developed for these 2 cities, especially on the warning, dissemination, and communication. So this is the tropical cyclone storm viewer, which is now useful. And I think last month we have used a lot for the Vietnam, because there was a back-to-back events in the region, especially for Philippines and in Vietnam. And this tool was highly useful. And this is also available online. And this is like one of the examples from South Asia. We have used the same tool for the South Asia as well, in Sri Lanka and India. These are like some of the basically bulletins we are developing for different events, and we are sharing with the city agencies as well as for the national agencies. And this is very useful for those agencies to actually take precautionary measures. Here we are working with the pillar 4, which is the preparedness and response capabilities. So again, we are working closely with the local agencies, the township level and the city level agencies, to build their capacities. These are like some of the examples of that one. So second program, which I will be talking about, the Survey Mekong, and it is again a very important program, again a multi-stakeholder program using support from USAID and NASA and ADPC. And this we are implementing in the lower Mekong countries, especially Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, PDR, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And we are working at the different levels, especially for the droughts and flood. And I will be displaying 2 tools here. One is the Regional Drought and Crop Yield Information System, which is developed for Mekong River Commission, MRC. And this is highly useful for for the agriculture ministries and departments and water resource agencies in these lower Mekong countries. And this actually we are working with the nowcast and seasonal forecast for 90 days. So this is also available online, and we are using some of the Earth observation data from the satellites of US, as well as from some of the information we are collecting from the institute data, collecting from the national agencies and the regional agencies in the region. The next tool is regarding the historical flood analysis tools. And this is also, we are working with the Mekong River Commission, especially for this Mekong River, Mekong region and lower Mekong region. And again, we are here, the products are, we are closely working with the NASA to generate the products with the Landsat data and Google Earth Engine. And also we are using some OpenStreetMap from the different sources. And we are using the digital elevation model from the SRTM Shuttle Radar Topographic Mission of NASA. So, and 30-meter digital elevation model is available with this one. But last but not least, the most important thing is that banking on the traditional knowledge. We are saying that, okay, we are using these satellite data, we are using many information, but our main focus is on the integrating traditional knowledge into all this technology. And that is also sometimes very important for the island countries, where right now we are working with the cruise program of World Bank in Pacific. We are working in the 7 countries of Pacific, and we are actually looking the traditional knowledge to incorporate with the technology. So this is a very good example from Bangladesh, where actually they use a 3-flag system to inform the people and communities, and then they put in front of the mosque. So if the flag is white, then there is no risk. If the flag is yellow, then there is some risk. You need to prepare, and if the flag is red, then you need to evacuate the area immediately. So this is, I think, one of the very good example, and we are actually collecting those informations from each and every projects and each and every country where we are working, and we are actually adding value to those traditional knowledge and also putting into the technology and adding with the new initiatives in that one. So ADPC, we are working with the different international organizations in the region and all NMHS and NDMOs, and also working with the research organizations like University of Huddersfield, University of Salford, and ADPC, we are working with the meteorological Met Norway and Korea Met agencies to basically enhance the capacities and also to build the capacities to bring the technology into the region for the NMHS and NDMOs. And the quick summary from my side is that it is evident from the research that hydrometeorological hazards are becoming more and more complex, multifaceted, and then existing tools, technologies, capacities of NMHS and NDMOs will not suffice in the future. We need to improve a lot, and early warning system already exists in these countries, but require timely upgradation and modernization, and instruments definitely what we are using right now will not use in the future. Multi-stakeholder engagement and platform is the one of the main source of information and strength to work with the multi-hazard early warning systems. Advanced technology and traditional knowledge for LDCs and SIDS will be useful. Impact-based forecasting and warning, which is also an upcoming field. Many people are working, many agencies and many countries are working on that one. And then again, the last but not least, which is the forecast-based financing to support the people at the community level or at the bank level. So this is from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lalit. It's very interesting for having you presenting the experience of the ADPC from the very beginning until the final one. And the Earth and also the survey is also very, very interesting in building up the urban resilience in the climate extreme, as well as the survey, in the Mekong experience. Bringing space to village, that's quite interesting also for having resilience in the community base, but using some technology applied actually in this case. So one keywords on the pillars actually. Let me take your 4 pillars here on the knowledge, monitoring, communication, and capability, which is very, very crucial point actually that is to be taken into account in building up the resilience. So thank you again, Lalit and Professor Kim, for the final themes on building up, multi-hazard early warning system. And now we are approaching, the end of the panel session. And now we open the discussion for the Q&A. Actually, we have already collected about 16 questions already been recorded from the Bitly. Maybe Lengo or Andy can maybe presenting share the questions, because the question already been translated into English actually, and some of the question already been provided in English and already been specific in whom the question is supposed to be addressed actually. So there's the 16th question actually covering some clarification or maybe comments from Pak Sumedi to Pak Lalit actually. So we can see in the question here that some question already been addressing very specific speakers actually. So let me start with the first question here is from Pak Abdul Malik. It's about the data, yeah. Has there been a conciliation of data between the ministries, agencies related to role in disaster management? And the second one is also related with the data to Pak Petra and Pak Puji on disaster data and statistic. And maybe we can start with those two, Pak Puji and Pak Petra. And then maybe the third question is related with maybe Ibu Wiwi, maybe, because this is related with some situation in Java. Of course, the Center Java in Semarang, related with the Pantura actually, the northern coastal area of Java. And then Pak Ricky actually, the fourth question maybe related with Pak Professor Kim actually. This is related with the Hawaiian process of building big data. So the first slide, maybe I can stop here, first slide, because we have another 3 slides in a row. So maybe we can start with Pak Petra and Pak Puji first, and then Bu Wiwi, and then Professor Kim. So the time is yours. Pak Puji and Pak Petra, maybe first.
Right, Pak Yoga, the answer to that one, yes, there have been consolidation and convergence of data among sectoral ministry and PNPB. But those conversions are for specific purposes on the basis of pragmatic, purposes of planning and respond to disaster and what's not. They are not part of a national system. What we need is to have agreement across all the stakeholders, ministries and all, on the data standards, on metadata, on the protocol, so that those data will speak to one another using one currency, so that it will come to the higher ground for usefulness. And I believe that could be achieved through the so-called disaster statistics to be part of the national statistical system. Thank you, Pak Yoga.
Thank you. Pak Petra, do you have any intervention on the question?
No, I fully agree with, of course, with what Pak Puji said. And maybe the question is also that there needs to be some more incentives for collaborative action to occur, because at the moment, it looks like each ministry and each directorate even likes to have their own system or toy or platform or dashboard, and there's not that, and maybe we need some more incentives that actually acknowledge and reward action which brings together collective action. Yeah, Pak Yoga. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe Pak Yoga, just addition to that, this is where the Bappenas could play a crucial role in which converting those data to become factors that determine the transfer of money from the central government to local. I know Pak Yoga has tried that before, to use risk information as part of the equation.
Okay.
I think we need a bolder step to that. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Pak. Maybe the first and the second question from Pak Abdul Malik and Pak Naban Fadlan already been responded and answered by Pak Puji and Pak Petra. And then the next question from anonym, actually, I don't know, the name is not recorded well. So Bu Wiwi and maybe Pak Ari, Pak Director of BNPB maybe can respond it also to the third question about the situation in Central Java.
Thank you, Pak Yoga. Maybe Pak Ari, would you like to start first? Okay, then
I
I'll.
don't have information about this, Pak Bu. Information.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, from my side, I think we can at least propose two priority initiative to deal with this inundation, abrasion, land subsidence along the north coast of Java, including in Demak, Semarang, and Pekalongan. The first one is we should really much consistent with our spatial plan. RTRW or RDTRK in Indonesian term, not only having them as document, but how really to control all the plan according to the our spatial plan or master plan, especially at the detail level or RDTRK level. And the second one, briefly, I think the key initiative that we need to be taken is related with the regulation and law enforcement to control mostly the industry located along the coast to be able to control the use of the water or water extraction in the area. So we can a little bit slowing down the inundations and maintaining the spatial plan will somehow control the abrasion. Maybe I will stop here, Pak Yoga. Thank you for the opportunity.
Ya, Pak Ari mungkin bisa membantu untuk merespon karena suara Pak Yoga.
Gimana Pak Lenggo?
Ya, apakah bisa membantu untuk merespon?
Pak Lenggo. Regarding this question, I'm sorry, I have no much enough information about the Sayung district Demak Regency problem. So in our task, we try to mainstreaming the mitigation for the coastal area. So we try to enhance the capacity of community in the inland coastal area. So I think from the disaster village, we have already developed how the community can increase the capacity in handling the risk in the. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ari. I think Pak Yoga is not here yet, so I would like to continue. So to Professor Kalkrim, would you please, maybe you can respond the question from Mr. Ricky regarding how to develop the big data and data management in Hawaii, or what kind of investment to support the data management for disaster?
Yes, this is a great question. And I have to say the technology, the apps, the tools are way out in front of actually the people, the regulations, and the systems for managing this. There are two big problems that I think exist. The first is and this is a very serious one, has to do with the ownership of the data and the uses of the data. I think it's a problem because it's been privatized by very large corporations that again control this, and it's not just Google. There are many others as well too, which create some challenges, I think, for governments, local governments, state governments, national governments. Second problem is I think that there are these very real and serious concerns about privacy, about data security, about personal information being shared. You know, I've been working with drones for more than 10 years. And when we first started doing that, it was a neat tool. Now it's kind of a nuisance. And people don't like to have their privacy invaded. And I think with a lot of these tools, not just drones, but other types of data collection systems, there are really major challenges in terms of how we manage this. And so I think a big thing that we're trying to work on in Hawaii, and the university is a big part of this, is how do we do data governance? What are the uses of the data? How long can the data be held for? What uses can they be used for, and so forth. And so those are part of the challenges that I think we face in terms of integrating this, especially with disasters.
Thank you, Professor Kim. As Pak Yoga is already here, Pak Yoga, I would like to hand it over to you again because your voice is missing before.
Yeah,
Please,
okay. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Thank you, and sorry for the interrupted, connection actually. So thank you for Professor Kim and Bu Wiwi and also Pak Petra and Pak Puji for. And then the next question is, can we move to the next slide? Actually, there's some question actually related with some other speakers that maybe you can see here that
we
can have some. Can we have the slide shared, please?
Yeah. Maybe somebody could read it, Pak Yoga. Okay.
So yeah. Okay, please. Okay. So from Bu Zahra, again, Pak Malik and also Pak Saiman Gea from University of Science Malaysia. There's some question actually related with the management actually, in this case from Bu Zahra about the miscommunication here, and also the coordination along with several agencies, especially with regards with the Central Sulawesi management back in 2018. And finally, from the Malaysian University of Science, related with the responsiveness of the management agencies. I think along with the question, I would like to invite Pak Ari actually from BNPB, if Pak Ari is still here or not?
Here, Pak.
Pak Ari?
I'm still here.
Oh yeah, Pak Ari. Okay. Can you be responding to maybe the question on the basis of what the government should respond actually in terms of the coordination and also the communication? Maybe the time is yours, Pak, to respond to the three questions, please.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yoga. Like I mentioned before, that BNPB has three functions in disaster management in Indonesia. The first function is coordinator, and the second one is the command, and also the implementation. So for the coordinating other relevant stakeholders, we open the community with the other stakeholder. So that's why the head of BNPB developed the pentahelix collaborative with this stakeholder. So we also develop a communication with the stakeholder and try to make the solution regarding the how to improve the community empowerment. And I think we in center of communication, center of data and information, we also get a website to make to accept a report from the community regarding the performance of BNPB in implementing disaster management in Indonesia. I think it's all about my answer.
Pak Yoga, are you disappearing again?
So he's disappearing again. Okay, thank you.
Maybe while we waiting.
Pak Yoga is still here. Sorry, Pak Yoga is here.
Rest.
Yes, please, Pak Yoga, please.
Pak Yoga, you better buy, internet package, Pak.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sure.
Are you still there, Pak Yoga? We cannot hear your voice.
Maybe I could just filling a time, Ibu Lenggo.
Do you want to respond, please, Pak
Very
Puji?
quickly. There are two
Yes,
things. Two things I would like to add to the explanation of Pak Director. Number one, disaster management system in Indonesia is already decentralized into local autonomy.
Sometimes the communication is not.
I know.
I turned to the package finally because my home's internet is not working well. Okay, Pak Puji, if you have any intervention, please.
Yes, just very short addition. One, I would like to bring to the table that disaster management system in Indonesia is already rendered into local autonomy, with the expectation local government will be fully in charge of disaster management related matters, right? That also includes the integration with the development planning system that is cascading from bottom to up. Number two, in addition to that, which is I think is not very different from Malaysian system with Badan Keamanan Negara and all the committees and so on, it's similar to Indonesia. Number two, there is a sense of admission among disaster management actors in Indonesia that we do need to work more on disaster literacy. And happily that President has given direction to Bappenas also to lead the way into improving disaster literacy. These are two things that I think constitute the potential to bring closer disaster management to the mainstream of life in Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Yoga and Ibu Lenggo.
Yes, Pak Yoga, you're still there. Maybe, Pak Yoga, can I take over the session? Or okay?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Pak Yoga.
Okay,
I hope.
Sorry. Again,
yes.
sorry for the miscommunication because of the communication problems.
Yes, maybe we can hear from the audience, Pak.
Yeah. Can we move to maybe there are still two other aspect that needs to be responded on the financing, and then another one is on the security. Is it already been responded or not on the questions list?
Pak Yoga, maybe we can ask the audience that already raised hand. I see that Mr. Jose Huta Barat and maybe Ibu Harkunti is here, Pak. If she can state her question from the Slido. Pak Yoga, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Pak Yoga.
Sure. Okay, Pak Jose already been raised hand since the very beginning, actually. And then if there's no more Slido question, so maybe we can invite Pak Jose, and then the next is Ibu Harkunti, if Ibu Harkunti already been here, actually. Pak Jose, if you're still available, please.
I think maybe he put the question in Slido, Pak. And I'm checking it's not in the room now. So
okay.
If Ibu Harkunti is still here, maybe Ibu can.
Yeah, Ibu, I'm still here. Thank you, Ibu Lenggo.
Yo,
okay.
Mbak Wiwi, please. If you have a direct question, please.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yoga. Thank you, Ibu Lenggo. So actually, this is a very important meeting that I highlight here because in responding the government, plan, especially in the reformation of the national disaster resilience system. My question here, maybe I don't know, maybe some of you can respond. My question here is actually related. What does it the better meaning for the resilient in Indonesian, whether it's ketahanan or ketangguhan? And then if we are talking about this as ketahanan, my next question here, how we can be better understand related with the food security, energy security, how we can define that. So maybe this is just only the terminology, but the meaning will be very deep inside because it's the meaning of covering of the status or not the status, the phases of the disaster management itself. And also we're talking disaster can only not natural disaster like everybody just discussed, all the panels here. I agree, everybody was discussed is not only natural disaster, can be any disaster. So what they call here like, including also the climate change impact, including also the man-made disaster and so on. So maybe if somebody can brief me, because this is really what you call this has create a lot of question, especially all among my colleagues from the planners, because when we read about the national plan for the next year, what you call this, the work plan, RKP 2021, is reformation for the national disaster resilient system. So why not we are using the disaster resilient, I mean ketangguhan and then ketahanan. So this is maybe my friends from Indonesia can answer that, but I would like also the comment from other panelists from the overseas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Wiwi, Bu Harkunti. Actually, I try to tell everybody here that this is actually the internal discussion among us in the ERB actually last night. And then we are trying to have this as one of the issues that need to be clarified actually in this webinar. I hope Sumedi maybe can answer this question, because I believe that this is coming from the president, and then along with the direction from the Ministry of Planning, the Bappenas Ministry, Pak Suharso, we have actually the three kind of reformation. One is for the health system. The second one is for the social protection system. And the final one is for the disaster resilience system. So Pak Sumedi, maybe you can respond to Ibu Harkunti in this case, please, Pak. Pak Medi.
Yes, Pak Yoga, Pak Medi is still muted, maybe because this is parallel with swab test for the the agenda in Bappenas. So I'll try to respond toward this, but maybe Ibu Harkunti, the outcomes, I mean the objective for Indonesia tangguh bencana we want to achieve in 2030 45. And on this strategy and policy, we see that the resilience or ketahanan that we will discuss and we will review in this year, according to the agenda that we that Mehdi already present, is like the steps. So the resilience or ketahanan is the process, and then the ultimate aim is ketangguhan. So that's why we gather everyone here, and we want to listen from the speakers to then gather the commitment or agreements of the definition on ketahanan dan ketangguhan. So I think this is still a homework, and we will finalize this by the end of this years. But for now, ketahanan is the process, and tangguh is our ultimate goals. That's from my side, Ibu. Thank you.
Okay, that's from the Bappenas side, Bu Wiwi.
Yeah.
Actually, we need to have like maybe Pak Puji, you can have some
Sure.
thought about this.
I haven't put on my hat here to increase my credibility when I'm talking philosophically of what it means. Okay. Pak Karlim, I hope you don't mind me wearing this. Right. Let me dive into how it all began. When we crafted the national legislation on disaster, we did not envision a country that is only able to defend itself against emergency and adversity. We envisioned a nation that lived harmoniously with challenges and risks. A country that's able, like Professor Lim was saying, being able to avoid risk, being able to reduce, manage, respond to it, and recover from it. Now, the whole concept of that is encapsulated into resilience, which is in Indonesia as ketangguhan, right? I think you would recall to Cak Lontong who say, ada nama, ada rasa. So the name really conveys the intention. Is Bappenas and this republic retreating from that concept of resilience and actually falling back on resistance, which is the literal translation of ketahanan? I would submit it should not. Now, even if you say it now, you argue, oh, ketahanan is actually an interim measure towards the ultimate goal of ketangguhan, you have to make it explicit to the people of Indonesia that this is an interim measure. Otherwise, it creates this philosophical confusion, and it actually influences the way we plan forward. So with all due respect, with Bappenas and the President of Indonesia, do look at his hat and go back to the original spirit. Pak Yoga, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak. I think this is actually quite a good opportunity for having Professor Kim, Lalit, and also Amit as a global speaker in this webinar. If I may invite maybe your maybe input or experience working with global forum and fora. How we try to define the disaster resistance and disaster resilience in this case. I would like to invite Professor Kim, Amit, and maybe Lalit, if you can respond to this kind of very tricky question actually. Professor Kim, you have some thought about this?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, and I think that's where you were leading us to before the telecommunications issues, the disruption, which is this focus on security, a really broadened definition of security. I mean, I think that includes as it's good to see Harkunte, Ibu Harkunte as well too, but this notion of food security, of water security, of environmental security, of health security. I think these are really central themes that have come out in part because of the pandemic, but in other countries, in the US, we had also a lot of social conflict this past year, at the same time as the the pandemic. And this had to do with the disparities and ways in which we haven't managed a lot of the social systems. And I think that's increasingly the challenge that we face. I mean, and then climate change, tsunamis, all these other episodic disasters, they're just exacerbators. They make those underlying disparities or conditions much worse. And so I think that's what this is about. I don't know the answer to this but I do think it is an important way of framing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kim. I think that's quite interesting for having this kind of, the security, terms of security and the resilience. Okay, next, if there's any comments from maybe Amit, please.
Yeah. I'll add to that. I think so. This actually fundamentally gets to the question of what is resilience, and for us, we've spent a lot of time trying to get cities to recognize that you cannot resist every event, but you can start to address some fundamental stresses that exacerbate that event. This is where, I'll talk about an example in Singapore. We're working with a government where the Singapore government is very good when it comes to building infrastructure. So they're resisting flooding by building infrastructure. But there's a recognition that last mile of the flash flood, you can't build your infrastructure where it can resist every form of disaster. So then we are working with the community and saying, now you have to accept that there'll be a certain level of flooding that will happen. And how will you then react and respond and behave? So you can resist up to a certain point, but to be able to bounce back quickly, you need to start addressing some of the fundamental stresses that may be in the system. So this notion of resistance and resilience, and you see that from the example from the US, in COVID, the stress was other health factors amongst the community, other, economic factors, etc., which then made COVID a disaster for certain segments of the population. So for us, we always try to understand what are the stresses in the system, and then how do those stresses, when there is an event, become a disaster. So that vocabulary of shocks and stresses has been very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Quite informative. And from the overview of the Resilient Cities Network. So finally, Lalit, do you have some thoughts and comments on this issue?
Yes, Mr. Prayoga. Like the most important thing which we observe and we are working, which is the working beyond mandates. Because in many countries and many provinces, government agencies or international agencies or regional agencies, they are working with the certain mandate. But when we talk about climate resilience or when we talk about disaster resilience, these are like multi-sectoral fields, right? And we need to have a coordination, collaboration, and support from various agencies at all levels, from national to subnational to local level. So I think working beyond mandates at some point of time is very important. We cannot work certain boundaries or we cannot work within certain given time frame. It is like 24/7 job. And while we are working with the multi-hazard sector and in Pacific as well, and in Southeast Asia and South Asia, many agencies they are now thinking to work beyond 10 to 5 or 9 and 8:30 to 5:30, that environment. So working beyond mandate, working beyond certain limitations, I think that's the very important. And then, like Mr. Proti has already mentioned that resilience is nothing but is a flexibility in the system, and knowing your shocks and stresses, that is very important. So when agencies, when stakeholders know their limitations and they know their shocks and stresses, then that's the resilience actually, and we want that in the system actually. So this is from my side. Thank you, Mr. Prayoga.
Thank you very much from the ADPC point of view. So Bu Wiwi, Bu Harkunti, because Bu Harkunti is my boss actually in EAB actually. Thank you for bringing this up actually. about the clarification on the resilience and the resistance of disaster. And I believe that this is going to be very good for our homework, actually, not only in Bappenas, as Pak Puji mentioned, also in BNPB, and maybe other helix needs to be maybe sit together and maybe to try to redefine, actually, how the ketahanan and the ketangguhan would like to be the most fit with the reform that now we are trying to pursue, actually, in the next couple of years until 2024, actually. So any other comments from the floor, if there's a time, actually? Pak Petra, please, if you have some input.
No, just adding to that, because I think it's a fascinating discussion around defining this, and I thought Papuji and both Papuji and Ibu Wiwik actually were providing some definition, but I feel we always try to fit things into existing boxes, and in a sense, this is a new box that we're looking at in looking forward around emerging stresses and issues, and so I feel this is the one thing that we really need to consider from our lessons in Pulse Lab Jakarta is that you can't look at disaster management or natural disaster risk management as a box that can only be controlled or is the territory, let's say, of natural disaster experts. It really needs to open up and be inclusive towards multidisciplinary perspectives. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Petra. It's very informative, and we would like to follow up, actually, your input and suggestion. And finally, I got Pak Krishna here, Professor Krishna Pribadi from ITB, also my predecessor, actually, in Platform Nasional. Maybe you can give us some clue and some suggestion, Pak Krishna, please.
Thank you, Pak Suprayoga. I would like to just give comment. This is a very informative, interesting discussions and on the very important issues of resilience, which was discussed just now, that it should be interpreted as the ketangguhan instead of ketahanan, because ketangguhan is a much broader sense that related to the capacity to recover back quickly, and at the same time also to be able to resist shock. Anyway, my point, or this is more like a hope for all of us, and especially for Bappenas, Pak Suprayoga, this disaster resilience discourses in Indonesia and program should continue in a sustainable way, and also discussion on the disaster literacy, etc. I just hope that it is not just a flavor of the month of the agencies, because when people change, we have experienced that all policy change and all direction changes, and we experienced that in the past 20 years. Yeah, this is my 5 cents thought on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Krishna, and your suggestion is very well taken, and we would like to have this as our next agenda, actually, for maybe having maybe much further discussion, actually, about this issue to be much clearer, and as well much working on the policy framework that Bappenas and also BNPB is now working on this issue very well. So thank you, and I think this is going to be very good for us to wrap up. If there is no more question, I don't see any participant raising hand anymore. Bu Lenggo, if there's no more question,
do you want
can
us to? Yes, Pak Yoga, do you want us to show the Slido?
I think is there any other question?
Yeah.
Still available?
Arka, would you please?
The final one.
Yeah, would you please share the screen from Slido? There's a question from Raditya Pranadi, and then from Ronnie. We can maybe Pak Puji can answer this.
Okay, please.
Wow,
share
it comes
the
to me,
Slido.
Can you share the Slido, Arka?
If it's troublesome, could you just read it?
Yeah, Pak Puji, may I use bahasa? So,
If you like.
Ya, Indonesia dikatakan belum memiliki instrumen yang khusus untuk mengukur kinerja kenaguan kota. Jadi dari sudut pandang Pak Puji, kira-kira indikator seperti apa yang tepat untuk kita gunakan mengukur ketenaguan kota?
Okay. My direct answer to that is I think it's rather imprecise to say that we don't have any indicators for city resilience. Indonesia is very active part of UNTRR initiative on safer cities, right? BNPB has done many training at the local level for safer cities to promote those indicators and whatnot. And at the end, you could fall back on Amit's safer city framework that was presented earlier. What we need to do is not to create yet another indicators. What we need to do is to absorb those indicators to development planning. And like what Pak Petra was saying, to attach the incentive and disincentive to those local governments' initiative and undertaking, so that those become the action of consequence. So if the government Semarang is not undertaking the necessary measures on city resilience, there's going to be some punishment, all right? But if he does what he's supposed to do, there's going to be some incentive in terms of budgetary consideration and what's not. So in brief, Ibu Lenggo, we do have indicators. What we need to do is to get one more step further to incorporate it into our governance and development planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Puji. So that will be the final question from the Slido. Okay. So if there's no more question and intervention, I would like to give the time back to Bu Lenggo. And if there's no more session, maybe we can wrapping up the webinar right away. Please, Bu Lenggo, what to do next?
Yes, thank you, Pak Suprayoga Hadi, for your time and your availability to be our moderator. And it's very interesting for the discussion. Our distinguished speaker, Ibu Wiwi, Mr. Amit, Professor Kim, Mr. Lalit, Pak Puji, and Pak Petra. Thank you very much and very interesting. Now Bappenas has a homework to then we will then have an agreement to using ketahanan or ketangguhan, but we hope IABI will support us with this and we can gather all pentahelix to then discuss our commitment and agreement how to build Indonesia disaster resilience strategy. So Pak Yoga, from the beginning of the seminar, Pak Medi is available to close this session, this seminar, but unfortunately there's something important that Pak Sumedi need to then overcome. So I would like to ask Pak Suprayoga Hadi as my guru and everyone's guru, I think. So Pak Suprayoga Hadi, would you please then give us a closing remark and then we can end this seminar, and I hope this seminar will give lots of knowledge and then we can then work together to collaborate. Pak Yoga, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Lenggo. That's the interesting of Bappenas actually. Sumedi is actually my successor. And I'm a predecessor of Sumedi. Now I'm trying to be his staff actually. But that's good actually for a very flexible situation in Bappenas. And I believe this discussion is very giving Bappenas and also BNPB as well as the pentahelix partnership actually in building up the resilience of disaster, as well as of course, I know maybe Ibu Kunti already mentioned very well that the disaster resistance as well as disaster security also would like to be very much related with the building up the disaster resilience. So first of all, and finally, we would like to give appreciation actually to all the distinguished speakers, beginning with, of course, Pak Deputy of Regional Development, Pak Rudi, and then Pak Sumedi and Pak Ari from the BNPB for giving us the Indonesian context of disaster resilience, which is still in progress. And of course, particularly for our desk from Bappenas, we would like to give some very big appreciation to all 6 distinguished speakers actually, beginning from Dr. Wiwi from University of Diponegoro, and then the second one Pak Amit from Disaster City Resilience Network, and then the third one Pak Petra from Pulse Lab, Pak Pujiono representing his Pujiono centers, and then Professor Kim from University of Hawaii, and finally Pak Amit from Asian Disaster Preparedness Center for giving us actually, especially Bappenas and BNPB and other stakeholders for disaster management in Indonesia, a lot of experience and a lot of input and also intervention to be taken into account in the preparation of and the building up actually the disaster resilience systems reform that now is being assigned by the president to Bappenas for the next couple of years actually. And we know that this is not such an easy way actually to building up actually the disaster resilience system, because as we have discussed before, that the system itself is not really well developed since the very beginning, but we are trying to have this system to be strengthened and to be reformed, which is quite interesting actually for having the system which is not really exists, but now we are trying to strengthening and as well as to making this a better actually in the future. This is still under the framework of the long-term master plan of disaster management 2020-2044, as well as along with the SFDRRs in the framework, and of course the SDGs actually 2030. And of course we need also to have this disaster resilience systems reform ready, hopefully maybe for the next 1 year, at least before the GPDRR, Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction, to be held here in Bali in 2022. So we do hope that the system itself will be ready and will be officially declared by the government before the 2022 GPDRR. So all the discussion and all the inputs already been collected and also recorded in this webinar will be follow up actually by Bappenas and colleagues actually, including the BNPB and other pentahelix partners for building up the partnership in making this reform or making this document for disaster resilience system ready and officially and legally declared by the government in next 1 year actually. So I think that's all from our side on behalf of the Bappenas as the organizing committee of this webinar. We again would like to thank and would like to give a big appreciation from our side to all the participants, and I do hope that everybody can count that almost 500 actually, not only from the Zoom but also from the YouTube actually that already been participating in this webinar. And we do hope that this webinar is something like the kick-off seminar actually globally, and we still need to learn more from the global experience on how we are building up the disaster resilience system in Indonesian context for the next couple of years. So again, thank you very much, and again, we would like to have this to be continued and to be followed up by the government of Indonesia by learning from the global context. Thank you very much, and we do hope that all the participants can be access the information in written actually from the link that already been shared, and the recording of the YouTube that still can be accessed actually after this webinar. We do hope that this is also useful and fruitful for all the stakeholders towards the better off of the Indonesian disaster resilience system in the future. Thank you very much, and I'd like to give back this time to Bu Lenggo as the organizing committee of this meeting. Thank you again, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Bapak Suprayoga Hadi, karena sudah ditutup dengan bahasa Inggris oleh Pak Yoga dan tadi dibuka dengan bahasa Indonesia, kami menggunakan bahasa Indonesia kembali. Terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya, apresiasi juga untuk Bapak Afiar Rosya mewakili Deputi Pencegahan Badan Nasional Penanggulangan Bencana. Kami berharap ke depan sebagaimana juga tadi disampaikan Pak Yoga, kita akan melaksanakan forum-forum bersama untuk membangun kesepakatan dan komitmen bersama dalam penguatan sistem ketahanan bencana di Indonesia. Acara ini juga dibantu oleh Universitas Diponegoro, Departemen Perencanaan Wilayah dan Kota, siap siaga dari Departemen Perdagangan di Fed pemerintah Australia, dan kami ucapkan sekali lagi terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya atas partisipasi para pembicara dan juga peserta yang sudah hadir sampai dengan mendekati pukul 1, dan kami berharap ke depan ada kesempatan yang lebih lanjut bisa hadir pula dalam berbagi pengetahuan, kegiatan berbagi pengetahuan yang akan kami laksanakan ke depan. Kami ucapkan terima kasih sekali lagi, dan kami akhiri dengan mengucap alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu, untuk bahan sudah disampaikan di chat, bisa dilihat. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Pak Yoga, terima kasih Pak.
Ya, terima kasih banyak
Terima kasih.
Bapak Ibu semua.
Thank you.
Ibu Lenggo, terima kasih.
Thank you, Mr. Lalit.
Bye.
Ibu Wiwi, ketemu
Thank
nanti
you,
ya.
Bro Kim.
Amit, Bu Wiwi,
Thank you,
Bapak Ibu
Amit.
semua,
Thank
Pak
you,
Petra,
Lalit.
Pak Puji, Pak
Thank you, Mbak Wiwi.
Semua. Ya.
Terima
Terima kasih Pak Yoga.
Pak Ari,
kasih.
makasih.
Terima kasih Mbak.
Terima kasih, Pak Ari.
Terima kasih Bu Lenggo.
Terima kasih Pak Raja sudah hadir.
Pak Krisna, makasih Pak Krisna. Terima kasih.
Krisna, Bu.
Sama-sama Pak Yoga, my pleasure.
Udah difoto semua ya, Lenggo ya, participants ya, udah ya, oke, terima kasih.
Sudah, Pak.
Saya izin live ya, Pak Deputi, Pak Medi, Ari, Lenggo. Terima kasih.
Ya, Pak, terima kasih banyak Pak Yoga.
Terima kasih.